I'm a never Trump guy. I'm a never Trump guy. I'm a never Trump guy. I never liked him. I'm a never Trump guy. 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 I never liked him. I never liked him. I never liked racism. I'm a never Trump guy. Xenophobia. I'm a never Trump guy. Racism. I'm a never Trump guy. Xenophobia. I'm a never Trump guy. I never liked him. I never liked him. I'm a never Trump guy. 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 I never liked him. I'm a never Trump guy. I'm a never Trump guy. I'm a never Trump guy. I never. 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 I'm a never Trump guy. I never liked it.
Good morning, Gen X. Good morning, Christian Valeris. And you're right, the nightmare blunt rotation continues. Frogan, for the uninitiated, is a nightmare blunt rotation. And then Pete Buttigieg with Andrew Schultz actually should be fairly entertaining. I actually like Andrew Schultz. I like Pete Buttigieg, so we'll see how it goes. But Gen X says, I was trying to watch yesterday's stream. I missed. Lol, I can never catch up. It's all good. It's all good. Gen X, that's actually a good thing to hear, I guess, on my end, because if you can't keep up with the amount of, number one, if you're interested in the content, number two, if you can't keep up with the content, that means that I'm putting out enough that there's, momentum in order to be consumed by hopefully an audience that eventually becomes rabid. They're like, what's Connor's take on this hot goss? They wake up and they're like, man, what is Vaush, Destiny, Connor, Hassan, and Ben Shapiro think about this, and they put me up there in the pantheon of the greats, so to speak. So even though I think I have criticisms of all those characters, Conservative Liberalism says, morning nerds 07. Well, good morning to you, sir. I'll give you a nice little crisp salute. Good morning, Jonah Boy. Good to see you as well. Believer of Bob. Good to see you. Jack-o'-lantern, Eric Brandenburg, Jonah Boy, Casey. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. So easy news day. Basically what's going on is the Ukrainians are negotiating. Well, not the Ukrainians. The United States is trying to negotiate Ukraine's surrender on behalf of Ukraine. And then meanwhile, a Russian general just got blown up. So we'll roll through that real quick. And then apparently China and the United States are coming to the table. So we'll just blow through that. I still like doing the news segments in the morning because obviously we can get sucked into drama and criticizing people fairly easily, which is great content. I always love criticizing people. I always love talking about drama and alternative media, news, politics. However, we should consume some regular news as well, just so we don't become terminally online, so to speak. Casey says, but yeah, you crushed the shoe on head video. Yeah, honestly, man, like, good morning, Hannah. Good to see you. Sapient Green, good to see you as well. Listen, that shoe on head video, again, I like Shu as a person. I think her politics suck. I think that she has very easy, contrarian, populist political statements. And then I like eudaimonia because what I've seen, a lot of people, for those of you who don't know, Shoe on Head is a very popular Bernie bro Democrat, leftist, contrarian, America bad, political commentator. And then her husband is actually a traditional Catholic dissident right-wing guy named Eudaimonia, I guess. And so they're like an couple. They're an internet couple, right? Well, they have a kid. They live a normal life. They are married. Eudaimonia, though, will post dissident right-wing stuff on the internet all the time. And I do find him kind of insightful and interesting. It could just be his name, to be honest. Eudaimonia is a reference to Aristotle's ethics. So I do find him interesting. I just viciously disagree with him for a whole set of reasons. And then I viciously disagree with his wife for a whole different set of reasons. So yeah, it can be cool. It can be annoying. Conservative Liberalism says you should put out some feelers to see if she would be down for a combo, if that's the occasional format. I think she'll slum it with us. Maybe. Sometimes she does. Sometimes she doesn't. She was slumming it back in the Vosh days when she was going on Dylan Burns panels and hanging out with Vosh and stuff. She was slumming it. I don't know if she would slum it with me just because I've been critical. But anyways, let's blow through the news so we can get to the drama. It's a Friday, you know. Everybody feels a little, they want to phone it in a little bit in order to get to the weekend. That's the way that I feel right now, anyways. So, well, Casey, you're very critical of Shu, but you have to understand that we can be very critical of people and still recognize that they're popular and insightful enough to garner an audience. So before we start throwing elbows too hard and saying that they have nothing to offer society, we need to grow. We need to be competitive. That way we can say, hey, you're wrong. Come over to my little camp. Christian Blair says, do they really live in New York? If so, that makes me angry. Yeah, I think they do, actually. At least they did. I know Shoe on Head did live in New York. Any comment on the leader of Florida Senate leader in his statement? No idea what he said. Florida Senate leader and his statement. Let's take a look. Florida Senate leader statement. Is it about the FSU shooting or is it something about else? Democrat Florida. The Democrat Party is dead. We'll take a look. This could be more true in Florida than it is in other places. Yeah, more dissidents live near cosmopolitan areas. Yeah, it's so interesting that the people who would absolutely suffer the most when like the logistics chains of the world break down are the first people to be like, yeah, let's burn the system. It's like, do you have chickens? Do you have vegetables? Do you have land? Do you have firearms? Do you have the capacity to defend yourself? Because if not, you're just LARPing, right? So live action role playing for the people who are unaware, which is where you dress up in a uniform, you go out into the woods and you pretend to be a mage or a paladin and you fight fantasy battles out in the woods. Conservative liberalism says engaging with popular ideas, whether you agree with them or not, is worthwhile. Doing otherwise is ignoring reality definitionally. Well, conservative liberalism, I'm with you with engaging with popular ideas. That's not the problem. Populism politically, though, is appealing to the masses in order to, appeal to their shared grievance and their shared grievance and anger in order to get popular, which is a pretty common tactic in populist politics. His wife, who's due in August. Wait. My brother is raising chickens now with his wife, who is due in August. Oh, beautiful. Well, when the apocalypse comes, they'll do better than the rest of us. So that's good. All right. Anyways, Eric Vandenberg says, I have all those things, lol. Well, again, you'll do better than the rest of us. So let's go ahead and get it cracking. Let's start with the Ukrainian general assassination. Let me go ahead and share this with your screen. I promise we'll get into the drama as quickly as we can, but we should probably be responsible consumers of political information as much as possible. So let's go ahead and do this, okay? A senior Russian general has died in a car bombing in the Russian city of Balashika. That's a weird word. On Friday, authorities say, with news of the blast breaking just before U.S. President Donald Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff met with Russian leader Vladimir Putin in Moscow. Witkoff is in the Russian capital for crunch talks on the potential ceasefire in Ukraine, as Trump's self-imposed deadline of ending the war within the first 100 days of his presidency nears. The envoy was received by Putin at the Kremlin on Friday afternoon. The Russian state news agency TASS reported, saying Witkoff has also met with senior Russian negotiator Kirill Dmitriev. Dmitriev and Russian president's aide and former ambassador to Washington, Yuri Ushakov, were part of the meeting with Putin, TASS reported. This is Witkoff's fourth trip to Russia since Trump came back into the office in January, and the second one this month. Russia's foreign minister Sergei Lavrov said Moscow is ready to reach a deal on ending the war in Ukraine in an interview with CBS News on Thursday, but added there were still some specific points that need to be fine-tuned. So here's the problem, though, okay? What I can see is that the United States is effectively ready to just let the current borders stand in the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. I'm going to pull up a map and show it to you on screen. I know that some of you guys just like listen, you don't look, but I'm going to pull it up, and if you want to look at it now, look at it now. If you want to look at it later, look at it later. But effectively, Ukraine is not really interested in this deal because the Ukrainian position is that they want it all back. I don't think that's realistic. They don't want to recognize Crimea as a part of Russia. I don't know if that's realistic because I think Russia will fight for it tooth and nail, and Ukraine isn't in a military position to actually take back Crimea. Then also Donetsk and Luhansk, like I discussed with Lactoid the other day, these areas, even if you took them back, I think that you would effectively be facing a, you know, pro-Russian domestic insurgency probably for decades. And so as a result, I've mentioned this before, my solution would be Donetsk and Luhansk are majority ethnic Russian. Let them go. Crimea is going to be strategically important to the Russians to the point that they'll fight for it to the last Russian. And there are more Russians than there are Ukrainians. This area, though, Kherson, this oblast right here, which I think is actually a couple of oblasts. It's like Zaporozhye and a few other locations. I refer to it as Zaporozhye. But the Ukrainians have taken the city of Kherson and they've taken the southern banks of Kherson, but they haven't successfully pushed into the surrounding areas. So if I was Ukraine, I would want this back, right? I would want this entire territory back. And then I would negotiate a some kind of deal with the Russians where they would be able to use the highways between like Mariupol and Melitopol in order to get to Crimea, but they couldn't travel anywhere else. Like any Russian forces that go north of this highway get blown up, right? And then Ukraine takes, I'm sorry, I keep saying, I'm just waking up, okay? Forgive my filler words. But Ukraine would get Mariupol back and Melitopol back, and then this entire surrounding area. That would be my negotiated stance, but apparently the Americans just want to give everything away. So let's watch this general get blown up, or the aftermath of him getting blown up. Morning, everyone.
For the acute treatment of migraine with or without aura in adults, Nurtec ODT can provide relief in 2 hours.
Working on the caffeine.
Can last up to 2 days. Don't take if allergic to Nurtec ODT. Allergic reactions can occur even days after use, like trouble breathing and rash. Get help if you have trouble breathing, swelling of the face,
water.
mouth,
Change your
tongue,
socks
or
while
throat.
we're
Common side effect is nausea. When migraine takes your time, take Nurtec. Ask your doctor about Nurtec ODT.
Probably don't take Nurtec
Russian
for this crazy
authorities
side effect.
saying that a senior Russian general, the deputy chief of the main operational directorate, Lieutenant General Yaroslav Moskalik, has been killed in an explosion, what seems to be outside of his home. Some video circulating there showing a car detonating very close to that particular general in what looks like, I think it's fair to say, a targeted killing here. I'm sure many fingers will point in a particular direction for that, and it may in turn add to the notion that peace is hard while this level of violence continues. So much of Russia's missiles hitting civilians. I should point out here, this particular killing appears to have killed Moskalik alone by himself. So a lot still to be learned.
Yeah, and so that's the interesting thing is that Russian politics sometimes does involve assassination. So I literally put it at 70-30 that it was pro-Ukrainian partisans who killed this guy. However, it's still entirely possible that this was like an internal move in Russia meant to point at Ukraine, but also just take out a guy in Russian politics. Because let's be real, these people kill each other all the time. Eric Brandenburg says, Connor, is Mrs. Points feeling any better? Mrs. Brandenburg here is dealing with a sprained shoulder. No, Mrs. Points is still getting her butts kicked by the most recent disease. Whatever's going around right now, it's just kind of a cold, but it is kicking her butt. She's had a rough 48 hours. But we do what we can, okay? The horrors endure, but so do we, okay? Razzle Smasher says, and good morning. I now know the difference between Razzle Cherry and Razzle Smasher. Hell yeah, get wrecked, orcs. I love the smell of napalm in the morning. Well, listen. I don't know this guy. I don't know how bad of a dude he is, but he is a part of the Russian military establishment, which is currently raining artillery shells and missiles into Ukrainian civilian areas. And so as a result, I'm not going to shed any tears, but you know, he's still a human being at the end of the day. He's just a human being who's a part of a terrible power structure. So we'll see. Kesoko says, the world will let Ukraine fall. No one is sending troops. No one is willing to spark a NATO-Russian conflict. For some reason, NATO membership is not an option in the foreseeable future. I agree. I think I mentioned this in the debate. I would like to see the borders frozen approximately where they are right now. I would like to see Zaporozhye return to Ukraine. Then I would like to see a unilateral or multilateral or even NATO membership for Ukraine. That way they can reliably predict that Russia will not invade again. That would be my solution. All right. Let us continue. Why Trump's Crimea proposal would tear down a decades-old pillar of the global order. I think this is an important detail. I won't spend too much time on it, but we'll take a look and see why we should care about Crimea specifically. U.S. President Donald Trump's suggestion that Ukraine should recognize Russia's control over Crimea, the southern Ukrainian peninsula that Moscow annexed more than a decade ago, is threatening to upend international law and order. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has long made it clear that this is a red line for him. There's nothing to talk about it. It's against our constitution, he told reporters on Tuesday. Trump scolded Zelensky for that remark, accusing him of making it so difficult to settle this war. Dude, I don't think this is happening. I don't think there's going to be a settlement. Insane Crimea was lost years ago. It is a topic Trump revisited in an interview with Time magazine, saying as part of his proposal to end the war, Crimea will stay with Russia, and Zelensky understands that, and everybody understands that it's been with them for a long time. This spat between the two presidents has put the region firmly back on the agenda. Here's what we know. Yeah. So if Ukraine, here's the thing, is like I don't believe in giving Ukraine a blank check. I think it's naive of Ukraine to think that they can take back Crimea and Donetsk and Luhansk. However, I also understand that there's domestic pressures where nationalists in the Ukrainian armed forces don't want Zelensky to concede any territory legally. Because if they concede that territory legally, and then in the future Ukraine has the capacity to take back those territories, they want the legalistic and moral authority to do it. Whereas if you concede these territories, that means that you no longer lay clay to them, which means that you cannot invade them later. So Russia sees that. Ukraine sees that. I understand it. I just think it's dumb. Conservative liberalism says Ukraine would be smart to follow Finland's constitutional war stance, be neutral, protect your people, and make moves to join the West if pressed to do so. Yeah, I think so. Eric Brandenburg says that, Connor, let's be real. Russia would much prefer to seize territory up to NATO borders as opposed to NATO gaining territory next to Russian borders. I mean, I agree. I just think that it's a little silly to not, you have to deal with military reality, right? Trump outlines what total victory looks like in his trade war. It's going to cost you. Let's give this a few paragraphs. President Donald Trump said high tariffs could be here to stay, and he'd declare total victory if import taxes were as high as 50% a year from now, according to an interview with Time released Friday. That's kind of crazy pants. Trump has placed historic tariffs on a wide variety of imports, including 10% tariff on virtually everything coming into the United States. He also imposed 25% tariffs on steel, aluminum, autos, and many items from Mexico and Canada. But by far the most significant trade action is a tariff on it of at least 145% on most Chinese goods imported to the United States. Combined America effective tax rate now stands at 22.8% to Fitch ratings. That's by far the highest of any developed country in the world. This is going to be bipolar. This is going to be mercurial. This is going to be, crazy for a while. If they're not saying anything new, I'm not going to spend my time reading it. China quietly rolls back retaliatory tariffs on some U.S.-made semiconductors, import agencies say. Okay, cool. China and Chinese-American relations are thawing on specific goods that China needs. Cool. Thank you for sharing. While the world watches Gaza, here's what's happening in the West Bank. This is important. We need to take a look at this because the truth is that everybody is concerned with the Gazan conflict and the potential, mass starvation and death happening in Gaza. However, the West Bank is where Israel could be quietly settling or quietly withdrawing. And so we kind of need to know what's going on here. So we'll go ahead and do that.
The West Bank is an Israeli-occupied territory where a deadly new reality has emerged for Palestinians ever since the war began in Gaza. As the world has focused on the war in Gaza, Israeli military raids here in the West Bank have stepped up in intensity and frequency and have displaced tens of thousands across the territory. Hundreds of Palestinians have been killed, including young children, in raids that Israel says are meant to root out militancy. That says radical Israeli settlers have stepped up attacks on Palestinian towns and have expanded settlements and outposts across the territory. Those outposts are major drivers of violence against Palestinians, according to rights groups. It's also as military checkpoints and movement restrictions that choke Palestinian movement have multiplied. This has all created a situation where the conditions are dire and bloodshed continues in the West Bank with no end in sight.
Okay, not cool. Can we say that? Not cool, Israel. Not cool. You know, you're already in a tenuous position where most of the world, except for the United States, barely supports you in your operations in Gaza because you should be attacking exclusively Hamas militants and not the civilians. You're causing conditions of life that are, you know, not great for the 2.2 million civilians in Gaza. And then if we're to believe that report, which I don't see why we wouldn't, effectively what's going on is while everybody's distracted by Gaza, Israeli settlers in the West Bank are attacking nearby Palestinian neighbors with whom they have antagonisms. And also, there's an increase in Israeli security forces operations that are resulting in tens of thousands of people being displaced and dozens, if not hundreds, of people being killed. Not cool. So I don't know what to do about it. Israel's an ally. You know, we obviously have a pretty aligned trade and military partnership. I don't know what to do. What do you do in order to reel your allies in when they're being crazy, right? I don't know what to do. So I will do what most Americans do. I will shrug, and we will move on with the day. So let's continue with Florida Senate's Democratic leader says the state party is dead and he's leaving it. That's actually very interesting. So let's take a look at this real quick. This was brought up by a chatter. Tallahassee, Florida, the top Democrat in Florida Senate is leaving his party, declaring the Democratic Party in Florida is dead. That might be an appeal to practicality, not an appeal to principle. Senate Minority Leader Jason Pizzo's announcement on the Senate floor Thursday that he's changing his registration to no party affiliation. Oh, I've heard this a lot. That independents are the way to go because the Democrats are they step on too many rakes rhetorically and politically in order to be a viable alternative to the Republicans. And then Republicans, obviously MAGA dominates the party and they're kind of lunatics. So being an independent might be increasingly viable as a political strategy going forward. So that's actually fairly interesting that he's not going to the Republicans. He's becoming independent. That's interesting. Sorry. I don't know why it just jumped ahead. I wanted to check this out. Once the country's premier swing state, Florida's president elections continue to be decided by the narrowest of margins, but the state has increasingly slipped out of Democrats' grasp, and the GOP has made significant inroads in formerly Democratic strongholds like Miami-Dade. Registered Republicans outnumber registered Democrats by more than 1.2 million voters. Pizzo is on a short list of rumored gubernatorial candidates for 2026. Republican Governor Ron DeSantis is term limited. I think stripping myself of the title of a party designation allows me to run free and clear, clean and transparent, and help many, many, many more. Interesting. Okay. So there's some Democrats who are thinking that the party affiliation is a liability. That's interesting. So that's pretty much it. Israel, Gaza, still messed up. Ukraine, still messed up. The United States is trying to surrender on Ukraine's behalf. Ukraine is not having it. A Russian general got assassinated, and then Israel is doing sneaky stuff in the background in the West Bank, whereas I think everyone would prefer if they chilled the heck out. So it is what it is. And let's move into the drama. So I'm just going to check in with chat real quick. Say hello, say good morning to everyone, and then we'll get into the content with young Miss Frogan. So, good morning, chat. How are you? Let me check some previous comments. Dennis says full NATO and EU membership for Ukraine. I mean, I agree. I just don't know if it's politically pragmatic. Christian Blair says, let's be real. If the U.S. pulled all support from Israel, we won't. Israel's not going to stop, and the Middle East continues aren't likely to do anything, at least not Saudi Arabia. Agreed. That's actually one of the things that's weird about it is with the normalization of relations between Middle Eastern and North African countries and Israel, Israel's not likely to not stop operations in West Bank and Gaza because why would they? Even if there's a humanitarian crisis, there's not going to be a Arab military except for, and I understand Iranians aren't Arab, they're Persian, but there isn't going to be a Persian or Arab military that will march on Israel without an American response. Even if, let's say, the entire Iranian Republican Guard Corps mobilized and charged across Iraq in order to attack Israel, the United States would 100% provide air support and effectively blast half of the army before it even reached Israel. So then it kind of becomes about nukes. And that's a whole different can of worms. Dennis says, you have to remind yourselves that Russia is no longer a superpower. Its GDP is comparable to that of Texas or Italy. That's an interesting point, actually. That's kind of sad. They used to be our geopolitical rival during the Cold War, obviously. Eric Brandenburg says, oh no, that will affect all the quality goods we import from Palestinians. You are welcome. Oh, smack talking. Ooh. If I was Palestinian, I would be offended. K Soko says, lol, well, according to NATO, a nation involved in border disputes cannot join NATO. I mean, I agree, but at the same time, like Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, those were all territories that were former Russian, and it was predictable that they would end up in border disputes with Russia. So I don't know if that's that big of a deal. If Russia and Ukraine sign a peace treaty recognizing borders approximately where they are, with Zaporozhye going back to the Ukrainians, then I think that would be stable enough in order to get them into NATO. But if the politics are too fraught, then I think a unilateral security agreement is decent enough. K Soko says NATO shouldn't let Ukraine drag its baggage into the fold. Sure, I'm okay with a unilateral security agreement. Casey from LJ or LI, excuse me, says David Jolly joined the Florida Dems though, so I guess you win some and you lose some. Yeah, of course. Harmonic Fox says, I wonder if voting independent is going to become more popular with all the nonsense going on. We'll see. Sapien Green says it's not great for Democrats. It's not. Let's be real. With Democrats, I'm a never Trump Republican. It's a lesser of two evils calculation, but you better believe the second that Republicans are like, yeah, we're coming for your AR-15s, that sentence alone did a lot of damage. David Hogg becoming the DNC vice chair, it depends on how like anti-gun he is, but if Democrats don't get nuanced on guns, they're gonna lose any never Trump Republican. Because if you make me choose between deregulation with Republicans, which can be good, it can be lucrative, and very limited gun control only to what's necessary, versus Democrats who some of them are like socialists and some of them are very anti-gun. If you make me choose, then I'm either not going to vote at all, or I'll vote for Republicans if I need to. The only way that a Democrat gets me to vote is effectively being moderate on guns and then more free market than they are socialist. And I'm being socialist descriptively because there's that guy in New York who's getting more popular, who's talking about creating like state-run grocery stores so people have access to cheap groceries. That's okay, but it's the decommodification of basic human needs, right? And then he talks about rent stabilization and subsidized housing, which again, that can be an okay policy, but that's again the decommodification of basic human needs. So I just think he's a socialist dog whistler, right? So I don't think that he wants to stop there. I think he's stated that he's a socialist. So I'm not voting for a socialist. Sorry. Eric Brandenburg says, Cotter, hot take, but if almost everybody has smartphones, then why do we have representatives at the state and federal levels? Because I'm not a Democrat. You don't have representatives because everybody can vote via telephone. You have representatives because they're supposed to be smarter, right? They're supposed to be smarter than the average person. They're oftentimes not, but they're supposed to be representatives. The representative democracy, I'm sorry, I need to explain this because this question actually triggers the hell out of me, okay? Democracy is the rule of the people, right? The demos, yeah? Well, representative democracy is I don't vote on higher taxation. I don't vote on what wars we go to. I don't vote on all that kind of stuff because frankly, I'm probably not sufficiently informed in order to make intelligent decisions about that, okay? I vote for a representative who talks about foreign policy, taxation, tariffs, diplomatic relations. He goes to briefings all day, every day. Effectively, his life is going to meetings about local and international politics. And so since he is better informed, he or she supposedly can make better decisions. Eric Brandenburg says, no, then farmers or serfs make the price of diesel cheaper, so logistics are cheaper. Okay. But I'm not a direct democracy advocate in the slightest. I'm going to work with Valor Media because Valor Media is about like creating a culture within young men that takes responsibility, encourages them to be pro-social, encourages them to participate in our republic, and also supports and defends our republic. However, those could also all be Republican virtues, not necessarily exclusively Democrat virtues, right? And so that's why I'm very interested in the Valor Media project. But I am not an advocate for direct democracy. And no offense to Ken. I love Ken. He's my boss. I do what 99% of the time, if he asks me to do something, I'm going to do it. However, if he's like, you have to become an advocate for direct democracy, pass. like that's not going to happen. Sorry. Yeah. Pass. So I don't know if that was your point, but that it did trigger me into responding that way. Let me read a few more chats and then we'll get into the content. Silver Jacket Man says, I don't know, man. The Dems have wanted to do federal gun reforms for how many years now with no real movement on it. The NRA is a freaking powerful lobby. I don't even know if that's true anymore. The NRA has lost a lot of momentum because they were so corrupt within conservative circles. GOA, Gun Owners of America, they've become I don't want to say infinitely, but they've become massively more relevant than they were 5 or 10 years ago because the NRA was shown to have squandered so much wealth. Russia has an inflation rate of 10%. 1/3 of its GDP is spent on defense production. Welders and mechanics earn more than doctors. If the war ends today, the Russian economy will collapse. Well, that might be another reason that it won't happen. Weld QC John says, good morning, Connor. In chat, just tuned in, heard you talking about socialism. Did you see the story about Washington State making reparations moves, likely giving $120K to low-income home buyers? No, I didn't see that. Will Democrats stop shooting themselves in the fudging feet? No idea. Gen X says, Congress isn't sufficiently informed to vote on that stuff these days. Well, we do have plenty of dummies in Congress. But Gen X, isn't that kind of like a good thing? Not for me. I want representatives who are smart, know what they're talking about. They're able to research things. They don't just make decisions based off of what their population wants. They also make decisions on what they think is correct and best for the country. Whereas if you're a direct direct democracy advocate, then if your representative is a moron and your population's stupid, isn't that perfect? I'm being a smart aleck, but, am I wrong? Well, look what regular democracy has gotten us. Well, Jonah boy, what I would say is I'll remind you of the Winston Churchill quote. Democracy is the worst form of government, except for all the other ones. Okay? Sorry, we're starting to have too much fun. Death Lily 76 says NAGR is better than the GOA. Well, I'm unfamiliar with the NAGR's game. I'll check it out. Gen X says yes, MTG is a perfect representation for MAGA. True. All right. Anyways, some people are here for the drama. Let's get into the drama. This is Frogan, okay? Frogan is not my favorite person. Let me go ahead and get her on screen for you. Although I'll take her off in order to do the intro. Yeah, let me do an intro. Okay. So, hi guys, welcome to Counterpoints. My name is Connor. I'm a science fiction, political, and philosophy nerd. I'm a Marine Corps and law enforcement veteran. I am a person who engages in the Twitch and YouTube political scene, and I like debating with people. I like talking about people. I like talking about current events and news and drama and politics. And today we're going to be breaking down the character of Frogan. For the uninitiated, Frogan, I'm going to go ahead and bring her up on stream so you guys can appreciate her beauty. She is one of the few hijabi streamers. I think she might be the only well-known hijabi streamer on Twitch. That being said, she has said that she's not a devout Muslim, that she does not like dating devout Muslim men because they have a lot of cultural expectations about what she can and can't do as a woman. However, she does want to represent her Lebanese heritage, and she does want to represent her Muslim family background. She has been incredibly rude, incredibly abrasive, and it hasn't translated into much success. I think that somebody checked out her average viewership. She gets around like 160 live viewers, which isn't particularly much in the Twitch and YouTube political scene, but she has all the right friends. She's an orbiter of Hassan Piker. She got nominated twice to be a rising star on Twitch, and she won that award once. Everybody in the Twitch aristocracy, the people who are live streamers who make tons of money every single year, they know who she is, and they will occasionally support her career as a, I don't know, a good-natured public service, effectively. However, she's not particularly talented. She's not particularly bright. She's effectively a Hassan Piker waiting room. And some of the nefarious things that she did was, I'll just give you the rundown real quick. She wanted to do a fundraiser stream or something like that in order for her to get a sufficient amount of subs. And if she reached that sub count, she was going to make a 9/11 cake. I kid you not. She was going to take the worst, being Muslim, she was going to take the worst terrorist attack in the United States, where she lives, and she was going to turn it into a cake to ironically celebrate the 9/11 terror attacks. Insane. Can't believe she didn't catch more flack for that. But at that point, she was flying under the radar. The other thing that she did that she's probably most famous for is freaking out when an Israeli dual citizen, Ethan Klein, unfollowed her on Twitter when she was celebrating the October 7th, 2023 terrorist attacks. Again, insane. And she likes to pretend that she's the victim of being unfriended or unfollowed by Ethan Klein, an Israeli Jew, while 1,000 Israeli civilians were being slaughtered, and she was celebrating that fact. Then, the other thing that she got in trouble for, which will, as it comes up, we will address, is that she said that if you served in the global war on terror as a military veteran in the United States, an American military veteran, bear in mind, she's in the United States. She says that if you are proud of your service as a war on terror veteran, she hopes you get PTSD. She hopes that you don't get medical care. She hopes that you can't afford the car that you bought that is too expensive. And so basically, as a result, she is wishing ill on the American veterans of the United States of America. I can't think of something more criminally insane to come to another country, because her parents are Lebanese. She was born here, I believe. But I can't think of a more insane thing to say when you are effectively a first-generation immigrant to another country. But she did that. She's done that. And she's terrible. So, Ethan Klein recently released a response. Actually, let me back up a little bit. Ethan Klein beefed with the biggest political creator on Twitch named Hassan Piker. They had beef despite sharing a podcast together. They had a falling out. iDubbbz, another large creator, created a hit piece on Ethan that fell flat. Frogan participated in that hit piece. Ethan has responded, and so now Frogan is responding to that response. I know it's convoluted. I know it's high school drama, but the truth is that it has politics in the backdrop, and we all love drama. Without further ado, let's take a look at what Miss Frogan has to say.
This is the first time I'm ever making a solo YouTube video about everything that has happened the last year and a half. I address everything on my podcast, Arabs, which you can find the link below, but today it's just going to be you and I. I think the content cop was great. You know, I feel like Ian approached it in a way that nobody else does. He approached it with empathy, and, you know, it was supposed to make people feel bad for Ethan. One of the main things, especially as content creators, people tend to dehumanize us and forget that we're living normal people just like you. So obviously, with so much pressure on the internet, both on myself, and I'm sure Ethan can relate to this too, it's fucking hell. It's hard to manage. It's hard to deal with. So I feel like Ian approached it in a way that was more so holding a friend accountable and in a softer way, and wanted to generate empathy for Ethan. Other people don't do that. And I've even said this before. I feel like we need to stick to the basics as to why Ethan Klein deserves to be criticized, and that is for being pro-Israel and trying to deplatform pro-Palestinian content creators. I think it's insane to involve his children and anybody else that really doesn't deserve the criticism. I think Kayla deserves the criticism as well too, because she's
Okay. Listen. You guys want me to go hard? I'm not. I'm going to try to steelman this as aggressively as possible, okay? She's asking to be steelman. She's asking for empathy. She's asking for, you know, more whatever. You guys might not enjoy this, but I'm going to try to steelman it, okay? trying to deplatform pro-Palestine voices. I think that involving the kids and staff is messed up. But let me tell you why this kind of falls flat real quick, okay? So Frogan says that the content cop was... Counterpoints enjoys harming Palestinian babies. Oh, never mind. You're on her side. I'm not on her side, the enterer. Okay, I'm not. As a matter of fact, you can go back to accusing me of being an Israel shell. Go ahead and do that. That's more comfortable for me, okay? It's more comfortable for you to call me a genocider, okay? Go ahead and do that. Let's talk about why these points fall flat for me, okay? iDubbbz, all right? He's the creator who backed Hassan Piker and the pro-Palestinian voices in order to criticize Ethan Klein. But if you actually take a look at the video, the first 45 minutes of the video is effectively that Ethan is bad because he's mean to other creators. I swear to God, that's like the only point that I can remember. But Ethan Klein fails to mention why he's being mean, a substantive amount of the anger coming from the fact that Denims, Hassan Piker, and Frogan play footsie with a character named called Bad Empanada, who is a schizophrenic, stalking, doxing freak who took credit for calling Child Protective Services on Ethan Klein and his family in an attempt to get his children taken away from him. Okay? Now, you can say whatever you want. You can say that Ethan Klein invites the negative attention by participating in this. You could say that he could be less hyperbolic in order to not have these pro-Palestinian people get more pissed off. You could totally go with all of that stuff. I don't care. However, I think we should all be comfortable drawing the line at trying to get somebody's children taken away from their parents when you don't actually have evidence of negligence or abuse, okay? And you inflate the evidence that you do have, right? Now, we're all human beings. I'm going to try. I think that she thought because the last like 10 or 20 minutes of the video, iDubbbz cried and said, it's so hard to be a couple on the internet that I actually sympathize with Ethan Klein. And because there were people, good morning, Shadow 2 Bravo, good to see you. And because in the last 10 minutes, all of Ethan's biggest haters had to go around and say what they had, admired about him. And all of it was like backhanded compliments. Some of them were earnest. Some of them were not earnest. So she is just leaning into the fact that it was all earnest. They were being empathetic. They were trying to be nice to Ethan. They were trying to appeal to a sense of humanity and empathy. That falls flat for me. I don't think she actually watched the content as is, right? Now, here's the actual two criticisms that she thinks are substantive. And hold on, let's go ahead and throw this up here too. She thinks that involving the kids or the staff or harassing the kids and the staff is too far. We need to give her credit, okay? I think she's a psycho. I think she's terrible. I think the things that I brought up recently that she did for attention are terrible. However, she does say that involving the staff and involving the kids and harassing them is too far. Let's just give a smidge of credit there. Now, however, this is where it's going to get a little crazy for me, okay? Pro-Israel trying to deplatform pro-Palestinian voices. This is a complete sanitization of what's going on, all right? So, pro-Israel. Ethan Klein says he doesn't support the settlements in the West Bank, that he wants humanitarian treatment for Gaza, that he wants a two-state solution in order to reduce the humanitarian strife that's happening to the Palestinians. But that's not enough for people in this camp. In this camp, they want a one-state, majority Palestinian, democratic, and some of them want a secular government, which is just like, where are you getting that from? I don't think there's a single Palestinian that wants a secular government. But anyways, they think that there should be a one-state, secular, democratic, majority Palestinian state in the world of Palestine, which, by the way, effectively means the erasure of the government and the system of governments of the state of Israel. It effectively means the evaporation of the state of Israel. So because Ethan Klein objects to that and thinks that it's unrealistic and potentially genocidal against Jews, he's insufficiently supportive of the Palestinian people. Therefore, he's a bad guy. Therefore, he deserves to be attacked. So this all falls flat for me. And then trying to deplatform pro-Palestinian voices. Listen, it would be one thing if these people were like, oh yeah, I really sympathize and empathize with the Palestinian people. I think what Israel is doing is horrible. I think there needs to be a humanitarian intervention in order to prevent the slaughter and starvation that's going on. We need to stop the Israelis from causing all this harm. Okay, that's one thing. It's another thing to support Hamas. It's another thing to support Hezbollah. It's another thing to support the Houthi terrorists. And that's what she has done. That's what Denims has done. That's what Hassan Piker has done. So don't pretend that supporting terrorist organizations that slaughter civilians on purpose is the same as caring about the plight of the Gazan people. It's not the same. We can tell the difference. We're not stupid. At least I'm not. And also everybody in chat has a 3,000 IQ. So, you know, you guys, just by virtue of being here and consuming this content, are already smarter. Let's go on.
He says some batshit crazy things on the podcast as well. And I've said this, and I'll say it again. If you're spewing pro-Israel propaganda, I'm going to call you out about it. I received a text asking to say something nice about Ethan, and to be honest, I thought about it long and hard because I was like, this man does not deserve anything nice from me. But I said, you know what? I'm going to do it. Maybe it'll give me some closure. So I wrote a letter to Ethan and I read it off, and iDubbbz put it in the video. And this was Ethan's reaction to the video.
I bet you
would. I
would
will be reading my letter off because I don't want to sound robotic. H3 used to be the sports for good that I used to watch. I hope that one day gets back to what I remember. You were one of the inspirations for me to start creating content, so all this has stunk. I hope you really hear this, and I wish you the best.
I think, listen,
Thank you.
Frogan, she's so dumb that you almost can't be even mad at her.
She did wish us the best in the end. It almost felt like the nicest one of them all.
I think she was the only one being genuine, actually. So I don't want to, whatever, just Frogan, just chill, okay? Just stop being an idiot and I'll stop talking about you. It's really simple math.
She's also by far the smallest creator of the bunch.
Right.
I mean, is it even like cool that he included her? Like, she's just gonna get more shit for being involved.
It's not cool.
And like, it's not. It's
he knows what like this entails.
This part made me laugh because it was very tone deaf, and he's acting like half of his content nuke wasn't about me. Half of the content nuke, the entire ending half, was about me. So if I'm so irrelevant and so uncool to include, why the fuck was I in your goddamn video?
Like, Hassan can handle it, but like Frogan's now just going to get a pile of shit on top of her that I have no control over because people are watching. Millions of people are watching his video, by the way, and they're reacting to it. And they're not having good reactions
Not
to
just our audience.
Far from our own, yeah.
I think it's...
Listen, I'm going to be real. I love Ethan's tics, okay? Like, I get it. He has Tourette's. It's a pain in the butt, all that kind of stuff. However... you know, I have nerve pain in my shoulder and my neck. It's actually like quite a bit. And so if you watch some of my earlier videos, you'll actually see me like grabbing my hair and kind of moving my shoulders and popping things. And it's because I have so much nerve pain that I have to kind of like move in certain ways in order to stretch out the nerves. So Ethan like looking down at his arm and like stretching and cracking his arm and all that kind of stuff. I actually like sympathize and empathize with that a lot because I have a similar issue. Now, Frogan, addressing this little updated segment, she's offended, I think, because Ethan Klein isn't meeting her halfway. But why would I meet you halfway, right? Like, why would I meet you halfway if you're saying that I'm spewing pro-Israel propaganda because I don't want a one-state solution, I being Ethan Klein in this case, and then they do acknowledge that you were the person that was probably genuinely trying to be nice, which is a recognition of her tone and what she was trying to do and kind of recognizing that she, underneath it all, she might be an okay person. And then, but you're too dumb to, all right, that was mean. Saying that she's too dumb to even know what she's doing. All right, that's a little rude. That's a little mean. I'll admit it. But this is obviously in the context of them receiving an incredible amount of harassment. So expecting Ethan Klein to just be like, oh, you know what? Frogan's actually a good person. Despite wanting to cook the 9/11 cake, despite simping for Hamas on the date of October 7, 2023, while they're massacring civilians and posting it to Twitter, freaking out about when I unfollowed her, and then also simping for Hassan Piker and Denims and Bad Empanada, who are all people who are currently harassing me. Like, listen, you can't, I don't know. She does feel like collateral damage. She does feel like unfriendly fire, right? Because she's allied herself with some of the worst people on the internet.
Funny that you think me being in the iDubbbz video is what's going to cause this harassment, when in reality, it's you, Ethan. You're acting like you haven't spent the last year and a half doing everything in your power to push people to bully and harass me, including weaponizing propaganda organizations such as the ADL to get me banned off Twitch because I made a joke about you not being able to say Habibi. But no.
Okay. I hate having to do this. All right. I don't care that much. We've already litigated this a few times on stream and on my own like home channel or whatever. But Twitch, Sabra, Hummus panel. Okay. The reason why this where's a picture of the actual panel? The reason why this was a big deal is because you had a bunch of Arab creators who were making a list of who can say the word Habibi. It's cute. It's like a panel that says, Mr. Tax says ITF bootlicker. I don't even know who the ITF is. If you want to explain in chat, that's totally cool. But Arab coded, asks permissions, thinks it's a slur, loves Sabra. Okay. So Love Sabra is the hummus, which is the brand Sabra. It's an Israeli-owned company, and in what's the frickin' word? In Hebrew, Sabra means a Jew born in Israel. Okay? So what effectively happens is they jump between it being a joke about hummus and a joke about like proximity to Arab culture, but then they also use it as an anti-Israeli dog whistle. And in the thumbnail, they included Ben Shapiro, who wasn't even a part of the panel. He wasn't even a character that they listed. So obviously they're talking about Jews, right? So they can pretend that they weren't talking about Jews. They talked about Jews multiple times. Okay. They put a few white people in here because they jumped back to the hummus thing. But still, the point isn't whether or not they did the panel. I don't care about the panel. Nobody cares about the panel. If they did the N-word, who can say the N-word? And they did black coded, ask permission, thinks it's a slur, and it was like N-word with the A, and then loves, I don't know, it wouldn't be, what would it be? It would be something white, right? It would be like loves mayonnaise, right? So you would have people like Mitt Romney down here. You would have obviously like hip hop artists, so like 50 Cent or Snoop Dogg in the N-word. And then here with black coded, you would have people like Eminem, right? Or maybe sarcastically, you would put in like that comedian Kennedy, whoever that Kennedy guy was. Or like the guy who does Borat, right? So you would do like black coded, right? So the point is that it is a racist panel. And it was weird that Chevron, Capcom, and Samsung were sponsors of this panel. And it's okay that they got flack for it. So Frogan is pearl clutching when I don't think she has the right to. ITF is what happens when the ATF and the IDF have a baby. True. We have a lot of people who are coming in, jumping out. I'm assuming they're like Frogan Sims or whatever. But if you're enjoying the content, just so other people know that we're live, please like the stream. Please become a subscriber or a follower if you haven't done so already. And then also, please, if you have money burning a hole in your pocket, so many people have been so kind to the stream, given so much money. So if you've already given money, don't worry about it. However, if you have money burning a hole in your pocket, you want to support the stream, go ahead and do a super chat. It's always appreciated. Never required, always appreciated. Mitt Romney asked a pressing question of our times, directing to the black community: who let the dogs out? Pepto Pat, that's from conservative liberalism. Israel terrorist forces. Oh, okay. They're talking smack about the IDF. Okay. I think I raised sufficient criticisms of the IDF. I don't think you're in the wrong chat. Pepto Pat says she's the one who started their beef because Ethan unfollowed her. Yes, exactly. OCL says this is where the uneducated incels gather at. Oh God, I wish. I would love to have an incel audience. We would get them. We would get them so quickly to Volcel. It would be great. Well, QC John says Nick Fuentes has to be furious right now. He spent all that time raging out about Jews, and along came Hassan and Frogan. Oh, that's awesome. So true. All right. Anyways, let's continue.
It's iDubbbz, one of the only major creators besides Hassan who has actually defended me publicly in the last few months. This next section is about the double standards of Ethan's thinking. Let's get started with this clip.
Personally, though, and I've seen Hassan do this before, is he's accused me of it. He goes, "Oh, you just hate Muslims." It's like, bro, can you actually please just respond to a real argument? Like, please, bro. You know, he just like, you can't just sweep everything away by saying that. It's just not right. Are people very cruel to her? Yeah, for sure. You know, it's just, I don't know, man.
I don't know how to explain this to you, Ethan, because this is something you claim all the time.
Gen X says, Osil, I'm an uneducated I'm an educated femcel. See? Yeah, we're very diverse here. We're very diverse. So, Osil says, I think if you think that they are being anti-Semitic, then you bravely are uneducated, not educated if this is remotely interesting. It's remotely interesting. What are you talking about? You don't think Frogan is interesting? That feels Islamophobic. What are you doing, Osil? You're attacking your own the people that you showed up to defend. Anyways, trying to address a substantive point. You know, you're crazy if you think they're being anti-Semitic. 90%, this is something that Ethan Klein says. I'd love to hear you address it. Ethan Klein says that 90% of international Jews support the existence of the state of Israel. And there have been people in Hassan's camp that he has not disavowed, and including Bad Empanada, who effectively feel like any support for the state of Israel makes you a Zionist. And Zionists are legitimate targets. So do you want to address that real quick? I'd love to hear, you know, a Hassan Piker, Bad Empanada, Frogan fan defend that line of thinking. I won't ban you. You can explain it to us all. You can educate us. Think about that. You got like 50 people here who are waiting on bated breath for you to educate us about how being anti-Zionist is not anti-Semitic when 90% of Jews support the existence of the state of Israel. Let's hear it. Even if that was true, which it is, did you know the majority of Americans supported slavery at some point? Doesn't mean that was morally correct. Okay. And what does that have to do with anything? You can be anti-Confederate. You can be anti-Confederate and believe the Confederates were wrong. So you're at minimum, let's break bread on this because I want to move the chat forward, or I want to move the content forward. Anti-Zionist, right? Even if you won't concede that they're anti-Semitic, that's fine. I don't care. I think anti-Semitic gets thrown around too much. You agree that they're anti-Zionist. Okay, Osil, I'm asking you a question because I want to move the content forward. You agree that Hassan Piker, Frogan, Denims, and Bad Empanada are anti-Zionist? I'm just going to assume yes and move on.
But some people are actually racist. Ethan claims people are mean to him all the time because they're racist, using his religion as a shield to criticism, as he claims people are doing to me. A lot of the comments I get are about me being a hijabi and me being Muslim, so no. People are not more charitable to me because I wear the hijab, and I wish that was the case.
I have never, they accuse me of doing it. They go, oh, Ethan's just targeting Arab and Muslim creators. It's like, I have never one time mentioned her hijabi or brought anyone's fucking identity into my criticism of them.
You haven't said anything about me being Muslim directly, but your ideas about Muslims are pretty obvious from what you say. Here are a few of many examples.
Why don't you just make it easier? Why don't you just fly to ISIS and do them a favor and just let them, you know, just serve yourself on a platter for them because you deserve it. Like, I think per capita.
Hold on. Let's go ahead and back up. I'm going to steel man it. Listen, Osil, I'm going to be real. You're just not going to have a good time in chat. Like, you're engaging with what's being said, so I'm not going to ban you. But I'm just telling you straight up, you can stay here and trigger me and trigger yourself as much as you want. But I'm not going to, let's just say we're not going to have a good time, okay? So anyways, this is a clip that says, okay, if you're so pro, Middle East and North Africa, why don't you fly over there to ISIS and then serve yourself up on a platter? This is because Muhammad, who I think is a Arab sex worker or something. Ethan, I'm not a Zionist, Klein, playing Twitch or terrorist live to thousands of people, Islamophobia on full display. Let's go ahead and do it. Let's do it. Twitch or terrorist. It's not up anymore. But anyways, what they did is they took quotes of random jihadist terrorists, and then they took quotes from Hassan Piker and other creators, and they were indistinguishable as far as whether or not it was effectively either jihadist apologia or jihadist propaganda working people up in order to be okay with massacring either American forces or Israeli forces. So if it's descriptively accurate that, there's people on Twitch who are espousing jihadist talking points, is it Islamophobic to recognize reality? I mean, you can call me an Islamophobe if you want, but if Hassan Piker glorifies the Houthis, if he glorifies Hezbollah, if he glorifies Hamas, what's the problem? I'm describing your own worldview. No values to fight for, rather engage in dumb streamer drama than argue the substance of your beliefs. Osio, I'll argue the substance of my beliefs. My belief is that jihadism is bad. My beliefs are that firing missiles into random commercial vessels is bad. Okay. Listen, take a lap. Come back when you're less annoying. I just did a timeout. I didn't do a ban. I don't care, dude. Listen, here's the thing. If you want to have like a nuanced conversation about jihadism or terrorism or how the states commit violence that are, comparable in outcome to terrorist violence and the morality of terrorism versus the morality of like state violence, I don't care. We can have that conversation. Okay. However, if you're just going to spurg out and be like, because you don't agree with me, you have bad morals. It's like, okay, this is wildly uninteresting. It's wildly uninteresting to engage with. So let's get back to the segment anyways. So if there's Twitch streamers who are spreading jihadist propaganda, I don't think it's Islamophobic to identify that. And then I also don't think that it's Islamophobic to say that Muhammad, a tattooed sex worker doing drugs in South Beach, would get killed by ISIS. I don't care. That's fine. Ethan Klein is doing nothing wrong in these clips so far.
Like, I think per capita, a lot of the weird fucking terrorism and crimes and shit, I mean, there's definitely some strong thread of violence through the Muslim community.
Yeah.
Is he wrong, or are you upset that he's pointing it out?
Or Arab Muslims, to be more specific.
Or when the next thing I want to bring up is
Okay. Is he wrong, or are you upset that he's pointing out the truth? Because we could do this all day. The United States of America gets called like the worst, the United States military is the worst terrorists on the planet. Okay. And I brought this up a dozen times. I don't think you're going to have a rebuttal for it. This is the Iraq War. This is the way that this is the Iraq Body Count Project. This is an anti-American database that was documenting casualties in the Iraq War, specifically in order to criticize the United States military for killing so many people and causing the deaths of so many people in the Iraq War. All right. Now, what you see here, though, is U.S.-led coalition forces, no Iraq state forces. Look at these deaths. Easily 95% of the deaths in the Iraq conflict were jihadist militants. Are we pretending that these people don't exist? Are we pretending that this is all the United States walking up to random Iraqi civilians and gunning them down? Because it's not true. It's not real. So who is it? Ethan Klein saying that jihadist terrorism correlates with the Arab Muslim community and it's a problem is backed up by statistical fact. Just because it's inconvenient for you to consider these sets of facts doesn't mean that it's untrue. Okay? He's not saying every Arab Muslim is guilty of jihadist terrorism. What he's saying is that jihadist terrorism is a common facet in these conflicts and it's killed tons of people. Facts don't care about your feelings, and neither do I.
The double standards both Ethan and Gila have for themselves. Let's get started with this clip.
We misspoke. It didn't sound good. We immediately corrected ourselves. You know, that's how mature people do. That's how how you're supposed to handle yourself, isn't it? Like, what more do you want me to do?
I have no problem apologizing and admitting and whatever is needed when things happen.
This was in response to people bringing up how Gila said Yoav Gallant was a great guy, even though he's literally a war criminal and pro-genocide.
Okay. And in the context of this clip, which I'm sure she's not going to show the context for, it's because Gallant was calling for a reduction and moderation in hostilities at a time where a majority of Israel was calling for blood. Okay. So you can think that Gallant is a war criminal for whatever he did as a military leader in Israel. You can even think he's a war criminal for what he's done now. I don't care about that. But not acknowledging the detail that the reason why Ethan Klein and Gila Klein were sympathizing with Gallant was because he was one of the few Israeli voices calling for a reduction in hostilities, I feel is dishonest.
I'm a live streamer as well. I know being live for hours and hours on end, you can misspeak. And that is exactly what happened whenever I said the thing about the U.S. military.
Misspeak. Okay, let's go ahead and check out the definition of misspeak. Express oneself insufficiently clearly or accurately. Whoa. The fact that she's going to do this is crazy pants. This is actually just a lie. It can be a self-deluding lie, but this is a lie.
I said it in a way in which I didn't mean, and I also clarified it on Twitter by saying the U.S. military has...
Hold up. So let's go ahead and take a look at this because this is the original clip.
I have no pity at all for any fucking soldiers. Distress, thank you so much. I will never have any fucking pity for any fucking soldiers. The U.S. military? Boo fucking who? I hope you get PTSD. You know? I do the ones I'm like whatever about the US soldiers are the ones that like acknowledge that like what they did was wrong. They didn't know back then. Whatever. You're a good person in my book. Oh my god, Tom, thank you so much for the 10 gifted. So the US military that are like, yeah, like, you know, I did this back then, but now I know it's wrong. Like I'm changed, like fuck imperialism, fuck this. You don't deserve the PTSD. But like any other motherfucker, you're joining them. You're like, oh my god, I want my fucking Camaro, no student loans. Fuck you. I hope you get PTSD. And I hope.
Okay. Then this clip has to.
Base?
Yeah. So this content right here, the base clip, is she reacts to herself 2 days later once that clip obviously gets her in trouble. And that clip gets her in trouble. She reacts to her own clip, and then she's like, hold up. Actually, based? And so she doubles down, triples down on it when she's live stream reacting. So she's acting like she misspoke, okay? When I misspeak, let's say that I'm misspeaking, okay? There's a perfect example. I'm talking about the conflict in Ukraine. And because I've heard so many Ukrainian names over the past, 3 years, I mix up Poroshenko and Yanukovych, okay? Yanukovych is the Russian-aligned president that was deposed, whereas Poroshenko is the prime minister or president who led Ukraine for the first 3 or 4 years of the conflict, or first couple of years of the conflict, right? And so Yanukovych, I say Poroshenko when I should be saying Yanukovych, and then I do that for 20 or 30 minutes, and then I realize that I have the wrong name, and then I fix it, and I apologize. That's misspeaking, right? I had a clear idea. I was criticizing an idea, but I got a name wrong. That's a misspeak, okay? Saying something that is edgy and then justifying it later, and then saying that it's based later is not misspeaking. That is a misuse of words. You are trying to minimize what you actually did. Okay? So let's let her read her tweet, which is supposedly an apology and a clarification for what she meant.
Conducted some of the most horrific crimes against humanity in the modern era in countries such as Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Lebanon, and Palestine. My anger is directed at individuals who are currently championing these war crimes as if they liberated my people. It's horrific and disgusting. The beginning of the clip was worded poorly, and I do apologize for that. I go on to clarify in the clip that I do not mean all military, but specifically those with no remorse. What I said was out of frustration as they are currently bombing my family in the name of liberation. I realize that wishing people harm isn't the best way to talk about these issues and that I could have talked about these topics in a more sensitive way.
Okay. So let's go ahead and break this down. The U.S. military has conducted some of the most horrific crimes against humanity in the modern era in countries such as Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Lebanon, and Palestine. Okay. So I already brought up the Iraq body count project. We've already proven that 80 to 90% of the casualties in Iraq were as a result of jihadist on jihadist violence. It was literally ISIS versus Shia militias. Okay. And the United States military has done horrible things. I think that the enhanced interrogation and torture in Guantanamo Bay, and then the prisoner abuses in what is that prison? It's very famous. Everybody always brings it up. The prison in Iraq, not Buka, something else. Prison in Iraq abuse. Abu Ghraib, right? Abu Ghraib, horrifying, no excuses. Those people should have been punished. Also, there was the Haditha massacre where, yep, you already got it. Abu Ghraib. See, this is why we have a 3,000 IQ chat, because I say, what's the prison in Iraq? And we already have 3 or 4 people saying Abu Ghraib. 3,000 IQ. I have the best chat on the planet. Okay. Then also the Haditha massacre, where infantry took fire from a building and then they just cleared out the entire building with rifle and grenades, and they killed dozens of men, women, and children. Horror show. Disgusting. Repulsive. Okay. Same thing with, Robert Bales massacring 2 or 3 dozen people in Afghanistan. Disgusting, horrible, no excuses, etc. All right. The difference, though, is that the United States military acknowledges its massacres and oftentimes punishes the perpetrators of those massacres and those abuses, etc., etc. Whereas Frogan is literally making excuses for Hamas militants slaughtering civilians. And she'll never acknowledge that 80 to 90% of the casualties caused in the Iraq conflict were jihadist on jihadist. Or in Syria, that 80 to 90% of the casualties are the Democratic Syrian army versus the government, and the government dropping barrel bombs on their own people for years, or Russia bombing the hell out of it. There's no recognition of any other actors in these conflicts except for the United States and Israel. And that's like a blind spot with Arab and Muslim creators, where they'll be like, oh, well, this wouldn't have happened if you didn't intervene in our countries anyways. And it's like, yeah, okay. Maybe there's a genetic argument about the United States being overly involved in world politics, kicking off civil wars that kill tens of thousands of people. However, can you, as an Arab Muslim or as an Arab, can you acknowledge that effectively what happens is the United States or the Western world intervenes in a country, and then jihadists and main government forces slaughter the hell out of each other for years, culminating in hundreds of thousands of deaths? Will you acknowledge who the actual perpetrators of these crimes are? And oftentimes the answer is no, they won't acknowledge it. Same thing with Afghanistan. I guarantee you 90% of the casualties in Afghanistan are because of Taliban and Al-Qaeda forces attacking civilians and attacking their own people. Like coalition forces get blown up 10% of the time. 90% of the time, it's jihadists who are attacking civilians. So anyways, I'm not pretending that we're liberating these people. We're taking out bad actors, and then bad actors replace those bad actors. And sometimes the bad actors who replace those bad actors are worse than the original people that we killed. I'll admit it. We're not liberating these people, 100%. However, this is like a middle school level political analysis of what's going on in the world.
And like I said initially, I'm not granted that charitability at all.
I want to explain it because people bring it up nonstop. I apologize for it right away. When Ethan made a video to address this on his Ethan Klein channel, I
Next day, I think
made
it
a
was.
quick appearance in that video just to say, I'm sorry, I misspoke. I shouldn't have called him a really good guy. Like, I don't know why I said it like that.
What more do you want from me? I did the same exact thing.
No, you didn't, you moron. Wow. What? Gallant is a really good guy. What Gila Klein meant to say is Gallant is the person currently calling for a moderation to the violence that's going on in the West Bank and Hezbollah. Therefore, he's one of the reasonable voices in the conflict, and we should listen to him. And him getting dismissed is actually a sign of bad things. That's what you wanted to say, okay? What you said, actually, is, yeah, the people who participate in military operations and don't have guilt about it through serving in the war on terror, I actually do believe deserve post-traumatic stress disorder because they've committed some of the most heinous crimes in the world. How is this the same? Gila's actually apologizing and saying she was wrong. Where in this apology that we have up on our screen right now are you saying that you were wrong and you misspoke? Okay? All you're doing is you're further clarifying that you think that people who serve in the military, who believe in the higher goals or the higher ideals of the United States of America and its international mission, do deserve PTSD. That's all you explained. There's no apology here. There's an explanation. There's a justification. You didn't do the same thing. I hope she realizes this.
Said it like that.
What more do you want from me? I did the same exact thing.
No, you didn't.
Now we're moving on to the infamous button. So during the react to the content cop, AB started talking and the button was pushed. Here's the clip.
Authorities block healthcare to Gaza. Again, I'm not. Do you think that I'm talking about walking around Gaza when I say how great multicultural it is?
We
did
never
you think
defended
that?
how Israel attacked Gaza since October 7th, not even once. We never
I think that's
co-signed what they did.
Is that not the point he's making though?
What?
That you're talking about how nice Israel is, but
Israel proper is different from Gaza.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Millions
right now, say
Muslims in Israel.
I guess that's where the
And that's the end of the clip because the button was pushed. Anytime any member of the crew gives Ethan any type of pushback, the button is pushed. And he wants to say that I'm surrounded by yes men and people can never criticize me when he doesn't allow his staff that are part of the show to give him any critique or pushback whatsoever.
Which is BS. We already know that's BS. We already know, I don't know all the characters, but Dave and OB, like AB, I guess. I don't know all the characters. But I watched the content, Frogan. You can't lie to my face. You can't lie to my face and tell me that he doesn't allow criticism. There's plenty of times that Dave, I think is his name, Dave effectively says like, hey, Ethan, you're going too far. That's stupid. That happens all the time. And then also with like AB or whatever, I guarantee you it's not because they're trying to cover up what's going on. It's because they're trying to have a disagreement about Dan. Thank you. Thank you, Jack-o'-lantern. They're having a disagreement and it could be nuanced, and therefore they don't want to have like a nuanced disagreement on stream. Now, for me, like I would say it's part of the show, right? I would just be like, yeah, okay, what are you saying? Right? Okay, and then I would debate bro my staff, to be honest. So I probably wouldn't have pushed the button, but I do understand that this is way more sensitive. That staffer, I think that staffer is Lebanese. I think that it's been mentioned multiple times that there are like 2 Lebanese staff who work for Ethan Klein, and they get hit with all sorts of horrible harassment as a result of their association. So her being, kind of shocked that they would want to have a nuanced conversation for 30 seconds off stream to see if they could line up before they push on with the content. This isn't a criticism that I'm willing to accept. I don't think it's a decent criticism at all.
During the live show today, some of the crew defended me, and I appreciate it so much. And during this episode, AB mentioned that the most recent time we talked, Him and I had a disagreement.
People are saying stop being friends with her. You guys don't know fucking shit. I have not talked to her in forever. And the last time we did talk, we had a disagreement. Like where is this coming from? Like I don't understand. That is.
This disagreement was a DM I sent him, which stated, "Hey AB, I wanted to reach out privately because responding publicly and adding to the dog pile doesn't feel right. I understand that people often overlook how tough the job market is, and I get that working for Ethan puts you in a complicated position. That said, I think what pushed people over the edge was a clip of you baiting pro-Palestinian people and blocking them. The criticism you're receiving is largely because people believe you're better than that and don't subscribe to Ethan's views. I know you've been vocal about Palestine, but I think it's important to explicitly clarify that you don't share his beliefs and that you stand on your own. Ethan is not worth the bullshit you have to deal with working for him. Honestly, there have been times where I felt anger towards you, but after some reflection, I wanted to approach you directly. I'm saying this as someone who was personally impacted by Ethan and as a cousin. I hope you understand where I'm coming from." AB didn't respond, and that's perfectly fine. I didn't expect him to. I just wanted to get my feelings out. Although AB and I haven't talked in a long time, he's still somebody I care about. You know what I mean? He's like a cousin. We have that bond. We're both from Dearborn, so it's like we're literally cousins. Not literally, but I don't know AB's motivations or what he feels because I'm on the outside at this point. So I am just giving my perspective from somebody on the outside. I will say the invalid points of criticism towards AB is trying to question him as an Arab, which is completely fucked up and wrong. Nobody should do that. It is valid to criticize him for still working for Ethan and being silent for as long as he was. Those are valid points of criticism. But don't try to take away his Arabness because you don't agree with him. Whenever AB started streaming on Twitch, I was the first person to raid him, and I even helped him whenever he asked me for advice on what to stream. AB has also helped me in many ways as well. Even a long time ago, AB included me in an H3 episode talking about why people should visit Dearborn. Here's a screenshot. It's from like 2023, I believe.
Okay, so she's saying that it's messed up to involve the staff. It's messed up to question his Arabness. I guess that's like acceptable. I guess like as her being polite to this guy while still saying that they disagree, that's fine. However, I will say that I've gotten messages like this where it's like, I thought you were better than that. I thought you were better than that. Now, I'm just going to tell you, whenever you tell any creator, I thought you were better than that, their instinct and my instinct is to triple down on whatever I'm doing. Okay? Seriously, it really is. It's like whatever I'm doing compared to what I used to do, right? Like what I used to be a law enforcement officer. I used to be in the Marine Corps. I used to deal with like guns and explosives and cars and trucks and things that could kill you, right? And so saying things on the internet, even if you're wrong, even if you're being hyperbolic, even if you're being edgy, it's almost nothing on the scale of like, I don't know, things with consequence, I guess. Like it's consequential in the fact that we're all trying to shape how each other think. And so as a result, that can have consequence on the real world. But saying like a bad thing, it's like, oh, okay, I said something wrong, or I said something that offended you. You'll get over it. You'll be okay, right? So when you do that and you go into somebody's DMs and you're like, I thought you were better than that. It's like, dude, I wouldn't be surprised if like AB is like, yeah, I'm a Zionist now, Screw you. I love Ethan Klein even more. We're going to get gay Jewish married because you hate him so much, And you can be questioned on that, but they aren't anti-Semitic. Listen, Big in Gaming, I agree with you. So for instance, like, I think there's enough stuff like supporting terrorist organizations that slaughter Israeli civilians that I would be comfortable calling these people anti-Semitic. Also, if 90% of the Israeli population or international Jewish population supports the existence of the state of Israel, and then you say that anybody who is pro-Zionist deserves to be killed, I would see that as anti-Semitic. Now, if there's like a giga progressive person who is like, hey, Connor, as that's actually not technically anti-Semitism because there's Jews who don't support the Israeli project at all, and I'm not anti those Jews, then I'd be like, okay, fine. I guess you're anti-Zionist. And I would just do that as a way to communicate the same words while trying to move the conversation forward. So I get it. We could split hairs over anti-Zionist versus anti-Semitic, but I really don't care. See the comment before that one. Okay, let's take a look. Except if you're a Jew that agrees with Israel existing, then you're the wrong kind of Jew, according to Hassan. No, literally. Like, I think that I might have seen that, and then it's subconsciously planted in my brain, and then I just articulated your comment because we agree. We are in lockstep on this point. 3,000 IQ bros. We got to stick together, okay? 3,000 IQ bros. We're like this. All right?
He was also super, super supportive whenever I was nominated and won the Streamer Award.
All right, and the award goes to... Chala.
Oh, is that Lena? Is this Lena? They're a cute couple. If that they're a couple, right? Sorry, so I just want to see somebody in chat if this is Lena. I don't know if this is Lena or if this is some other streamer. Anyways, I guess it doesn't matter. I'm not getting feedback quickly enough. But this is AB. The 3,000 IQ hive mind is power. Good. Brooklyn, thank you to my favorite lurker for jumping up from the lurk in order to do it. Dude, if this is married, if they are the Lebanese mirror to Ethan and Gila's Jewish couple, I think that's awesome. I think that's great. Good for them, honestly. Big in Game says, we're not anti-Semitic, guys. We just hate the 10 million. Yeah, exactly.
Frogan.
Aww.
You did it, sister.
And to be quite honest, like watching this clip
cute.
back made me really, really sad because of basically the outcome of what this has become. You know what I mean? And I have nothing but love for AB and Lena, and I wish them the best. And maybe in the future we can be friends again, to be honest.
Oh, she's crying.
Before she moved out here, I remember us talking and she was nervous about it. And I said, at the end of the day, you'll have me and Lena, like, worst comes to worst. And then shit just hit the fucking fan.
Yeah.
Before.
And to those who are constantly defending me and having my back, I appreciate you and thank you so, so much.
All right, that's good enough. We get the point. She can do her own outro and her own advertisements and shout outs. I don't think we're going to get much more out of that. We'll move on to Pete Buttigieg, but just to wrap up this segment. So with Frogan, let's summarize real quick, okay? I think she's too nice for this. I'm not going to lie. She is too nice for this game because she's simultaneously saying like really abhorrent things. And then she's getting offended when people get pissed off at her. And then she's still expressing some level of friendship with her critics while also saying kind of messed up things about them and their perspective and all that kind of stuff. And so I think that's probably whiplash with the Hassan Piker community, where they absolutely want to hate AB. They absolutely want to hate Lena for being traitors to the cause and supporting Ethan Klein while he's doing what he's doing. And then they absolutely want to hate Ethan Klein. Whereas with Frogan, she is injecting a level of nuance to the discussion where she's like, I actually did like Ethan Klein. I think he's a good dude all over. You know, I just read Jonah Boy say she's all over the place. That he's a good dude overall. However, I think he's a piece of garbage when it comes to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I think that's fine. Like that's like a real human take, right? She's saying we are humans too. However, she's done horrendous shit, right? Well, Christian Valeris, I think you're going to agree with what I'm saying next, right? Christian Valeris says, no, F that noise. You're being too charitable. It's performative like Denims. I don't know, man. I'm kind of with Ethan where she might be so dumb that it's being earnest, right? No, I think she's being earnest. At least body language tells me that she's being earnest. And so here's the thing, though. She's not recognizing any of the horrific things that her side is doing. Like iDubbbz doing the hit piece, but not acknowledging CPS. Her and Denims and Hassan Piker constantly platforming Bad Empanada, who is a schizophrenic stalker freak. Human skulls being sent to Ethan Klein's house, and then CPS threatening to take his kids away. Now, obviously, that wasn't explicitly stated, but that's implicitly what's going on with, CPS going to his house. Then she will say that I think it's messed up involving the kids and staff, but then she also accuses Ethan of being a freak Zionist genocide apologist. And then she's taken clips out of, I don't even want to say context, but she didn't clarify that the reason why that Ethan and Gila supported the Israeli military official Gallant was because he was the one voice that was calling for a reduction in violence. And so she's still calling them pieces of garbage for supporting Gallant, while saying that, oh yeah, you did your apology, well, I did my apology too. And it's like, no, you didn't do an apology. You said something messed up and then you justified it later. So I don't know if she's like dumb or too nice or what, but I don't think she's built for this, to be honest. I don't think she's built for streaming. I don't think she's built for content. She doesn't have that dog in her. She's not aggressive enough. Anyways, that wraps up that segment. BiblioLife, one of my favorite chatters. He's here as well. Good to see you, buddy. The swastika bleach Zenpatko katana. Yeah, that's crazy pants. I'm gonna look at that real quick. iDubbbz swastika katana. This is crazy. So while criticizing a Jew, they take a group photo. And in this group photo, there's the gal who was talking about how it's based for one of their chatters to convince their parents they no longer supported Israel, while accidentally saying that it's based that their family now supports Hamas. Okay, that's character number one. Character number two is the gal who wanted to create a 9/11 cake as a part of a fundraiser for her channel, who said that soldiers should get PTSD if they participate in the war on terror, and then doubled and tripled it down on it while pretending she apologized, which she never did. Then we got the guy who said that we would have socialism already in the United States if Destiny, the streamer, was murdered. Then we have iDubbbz, the guy who said that Content Cop, his critical YouTube series, was too mean and he would never do it again. So then he backstabbed his friend by doing a Content Cop, and he's wearing, this looks like an Al-Qassam Brigade sash. Like, can somebody tell me? I don't know if we have anyone, but like, is there an easy way to translate this sash? Is this from the military wing of Hamas, or is this something else? But either way, I think this is like the temple or the mosque, Al-Aqsa. This says Palestine. This has the Palestinian flag. He's holding a katana. And if you look at this. It's from an Asian show. So it's obviously supposed to be Buddhist implied. But he's holding a katana with a swastika on the hilt. And he has a shaved head. It's like, bro, if Sam Hyde did this, he would be getting called a Nazi all day. All day he would get called a Nazi. And I'm not saying that Sam Hyde isn't a dissident right-wing authoritarian freak. I'm saying that the fact that y'all would have freaked out if Sam Hyde had a swastika katana kind of means that you probably shouldn't be holding a swastika katana in your hip piece on a Jew, right? You would think that would be logical. But no, we just have to accept this from the far left. Insane. Yeah. Big in Gaming says, Ethan pointed that out. Imagine if a right-leaning person had done that. Yeah, exactly. It's crazy. There would be no charity extended to any right-wing person who did that. Absolutely. All right. So let's go on to the next segment. I'm going to go use the restroom, but I'm going to start the segment first, I guess. I'm at least going to let you guys watch the intro. This is, who is it? It's Pete Buttigieg, okay? I'm going to give you a little bit of context. End of segment. Frogan is not built for streaming. I'll put it that way. Beginning of new segment. Andrew Schultz is a popular comedian. He's not crazy far right. He's actually kind of like the disaffected liberal bro who became like a weird apologist for Trump because he thinks Trump is funny, right? And then Andrew Schultz runs a pretty popular comedic podcast. And who is it? Pete Buttigieg. Yep. Pete Buttigieg. He went onto their podcast and apparently had a really good showing. And Pete Buttigieg, Obama said this about him, is that Pete would want to be one of the most popular Democratic politicians and the next president of the United States if he wasn't so short and gay. Is he wrong? No. Is it mean? Yes. So with all of that being said, I'm going to pull up this segment. I'm going to go use the restroom real quick. I'll be right back in order to do commentary. Enjoy. Like the stream. How's my favorite propagandist doing? Ooh, you seem to like Pete. We'll see. We'll see if we like Pete. He needs to wear some lift platform shoes, and he needs to become straight. But besides that, I think I'll like Pete just fine. We'll interrupt them when he gets too liberal or too progressive. Anyways, like the stream if you haven't liked it already. Follow if you're not following on. Well, I guess we're not live on Twitch. Follow if you're not following already. Subscribe if you're not subscribed already. If you got a super chat burning a hole in your pocket, go ahead and give it to us. If you're broke or your 401k is doing poorly, don't worry about it. Money is never required, but is always appreciated. I'm going to go use the restroom. Enjoy Andrew Schultz and Pete Buttigieg. I'll be right back.
What's up, guys? Today we are joined by the Democrats' secret weapon. He's an Afghan war veteran and the former Secretary of Transportation. He's also one of the first gay men to run for president. And today he's here to explain how he kept the planes in the sky, how billionaires legally dodge taxes, why Trump's new tariffs could be hurting America, what he ate in Afghanistan that made him gay, and most importantly, why every Republican National Convention Grindr is on fire. Give it up for Pete Buttigieg. You started a conversation when you sat down on the couch. You said that Lachlan should have died, which is not the first thing we often hear from a future president. He said Lachlan should have died in White Lotus. Talk to us. Like this is a big time.
I hate to say it. I love him. He's a good kid, right? Yeah. But just from a narrative perspective, right? And having
from doing that to his brothers.
Yeah. And like, Jesus, we just got started. No, I mean, I think the dad has to sit with Chaston. My husband and I have been talking about this a lot. Like, the dad should have to sit with like what he did.
The guilt, yes.
And there were so many parallels to what happens with Tanya, where he's like floating, right, when he seems like he's dying or maybe sort of dead. I think just story wise, that otherwise, I don't have a lot of notes for this year's White Lotus.
I mean, it was incredible. Awesome. I guess the one thing would be, does anything really happen to the ultra wealthy? Yeah, maybe that's what he's trying to showcase.
Which is kind of what always
they always get away with it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, even the kid. Yeah, because by the time they're on the boat, it's like none of that even happened, right?
Yeah. And then the poor security guards that are guarding the guy, they die. No one talks about them.
No, I forgot about that. I didn't like her.
Like those guys were assholes. They were mean to what's his name?
Fuck him.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
That's a good point.
They were bullies, dude.
You really fell in love with that.
Yeah, dude. He had such a pure heart. Don't bully this guy.
Yeah, that is true.
And then the three women seem fine after witnessing a mass shooting. Like they're just laughing, right?
Just on the boat, having a good time.
Yeah.
But yeah, in season 1, if you'll remember, the really rich kid like stabs the guy, and then he's just in the airport 20 minutes later or whatever. Yeah. No questioning, no nothing. And I think that's kind of to Andrew's point is like, I think the point of that show is the ultra wealthy. One guy has his wife killed. Nothing seems to happen. They just kind of get away with it.
Right. But there is social mobility because Belinda joins the club. Right?
And the second she joins the club, what happens to her?
She seems fine.
She becomes the woman that she's always hated.
Yeah.
She leaves out porn.
She use the same language.
I think so.
Yo, what TV show are they talking about? I missed it. My 401k is in witness protection. True. Divorced dad jokes. Well, the good news is I'm married. Osio, you're welcome to hang out. I have no problems if you hang out. I have no problems if we banter. But if you're annoying, eventually I'm going to ban you. Just being real. Christian Valerius, good thing he isn't then. You're still projecting, bud. What made you want to come to this chat after that move? The goalpost is the argument. Okay. Pepto Pat says the fact that the Kubo has admitted that the sword hilt is a Manji swastika and theirs is a long theory that Bleach is about Ishigo being a Nazi is so gelatinous. Oh, hilarious. I like that it's gelatinous. Lotus something. Oh, okay. The White Lotus, I think it's a TV show about a bunch of rich people go into a really nice hotel that has places all over the world. And so it's really beautiful settings with really beautiful staff, with really beautiful people. But what always ends up happening is number one, like drama, intrigue, all that kind of stuff. And then also there's always like a death. So sometimes it's accidental, sometimes it's a homicide. But what ends up happening is there is a death every season during it. That's supposed to be like the suspense of the season is building up to who is going to die and why while all of this drama unfolds. So I'm probably going to fast forward White Lotus recap. We don't need that. Let's get into the politics. That's what we're here for.
Yes, that's okay. But
at Gen X, if you hate Frogan, do 2 times. All right. Well, you're already here anyways. Good to see you again, Jen. We're doing Pete Butt Judge again. So love me some Pete Butt Judge. So let me do an intro real quick, then we'll get into the content. Okay. So hi guys, welcome to Counterpoints. My name is Connor. I'm a science fiction, political, and philosophy nerd, a Marine Corps and law enforcement veteran. Pete Buttigieg is the former transportation secretary. He is an Afghan war vet, as was said in the intro. He's a politician who's actually quite articulate and kind of charismatic. However, one of the challenges to him potentially being a presidential candidate in 2028 is the fact that he is not short. People are bigoted against short people. I think it's messed up. However, they just are. And then also he's homosexual. He's married, and I think he had like a surrogate kid or something like that, which is sometimes controversial in Christian circles. That being said, he's like seems like a decent, intelligent, articulate guy. And there's a whole bunch of clips coming out of this segment where he went on to a MAGA sympathetic comedy podcast. And apparently he did really well, like just articulate, charming, charismatic, funny, able to break down policy really simply, able to communicate it really well. And so even if I have my skepticism about whether or not Pete Buttigieg will be relevant in a presidential race, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't give props where they are due. And we should also give props to people who are just politically intelligent and think about policy and are charismatic and rhetorically gifted. So without further ado, let's go ahead and watch Mr. Pete Buttigieg charm the pants off of a bunch of MAGA sympathetic comedians.
But I don't want to lose the first thing you asked about, which is taxation, because I think, a big thing, I think most Americans, definitely my party, but I think most Americans believe that if you're making $1 billion, good for you. But like you should at least be paying an effective tax rate that's comparable, or I would argue more than like a firefighter. And that's not true right now. Like
because nobody really makes $1 billion.
Right, because it's all equity and it's like
you're not getting a paycheck. Nobody makes income. Like anybody that's generating that type of wealth is not making income. Right. So it's almost like, and this is not like a woo-hoo, like we got it so tough, but it's almost like the people who are, I think Miles used the term like not middle rich. Like middle class, like they're the ones that are actually paying what they should pay. If they're adhering to the tax code, they're not, hiring these tax attorneys that are going to, attack it all willingly and try to reduce whatever they're paying in. But let's assume, let's take it for face value, right? An athlete or somebody that's making $5 million, and let's say that they pay $2.5 million around, right? The concern I have really is potentially the corporations. And I'm not smart enough to even know about this stuff, but it seems to me, and I think tariffs plays into this, so I'd love to get your take on this, but like, it seems to me on the surface, and again, I'm giving a very emotional argument. You can give me tons of data, call me an idiot for even thinking this, but it's possible.
I doubt it. Here's the thing. Andrew Schultz, I think he does do the thing that I do, where I'm like, I'm kind of retarded, right? But that's only because I'm going to say stupid things some of the time, and I'm going to say ignorant things some of the time, because the world is so complex, you can't know everything about everything, right? But I think that Andrew Schultz, if you watch his comedy, it's actually pretty insightful and interesting and playful and great wordplay. And so I don't think that you can be that level of insightful and playful without being some level of intelligence. So I don't think that he's actually saying that like, oh, I'm unintelligent, I'm too stupid to understand. I think he's saying that I'm ignorant and I don't have all the information.
Okay. Seems to me that there's been an effort that has been supported to, send the manufacturing of some of these products overseas to increase profits, right?
Sure.
Or maybe it's more effective to manufacture them overseas. Maybe it's not all nefarious, but the idea is to increase shareholder profits or increase the profits of the company, which I'm not necessarily against. What I'm against is when you also put these like shell companies overseas to decrease, like you create the headquarters and you put it in Dublin or something like that,
Right.
so you can avoid taxes. So,
and it's a PO box, like nobody's even there.
Exactly. So you can't do both. You can send the manufacturing overseas,
Yes.
but at least if we're taxing the revenue of that company that's generating billions of dollars,
yes,
you would like to believe that that money would come back to the American people, and then we could reinvest in the American people, and then maybe there's other industries that would pop up, and those jobs could transfer from manufacturing to those new ones.
Yeah.
Or vice versa. Or
vice versa. But you can't do, to me, it just feels like if you do both, you are using the marketplace that America is, that
encourages entrepreneurship, all of that, but not really giving back.
And then stealing from it.
Yeah, there's no question, especially because a lot of what that tax revenue goes into or is supposed to go into here in the U.S. is what then turns around and makes it possible for businesses to thrive.
Can you give us an example of that?
Yeah, my favorite example is probably the smartphone. So, have you ever noticed, like in like talks or like when?
Ooh, this is not the way that I would have gone. So I'm actually very curious to see how Pete Buttigieg does this. Christian Valera says, Connor, you can be insightful and intelligent in one area and not so much in another. I mean, I agree. It's going to be topic dependent. Christian Valera says, Destiny, don't go live until like 1 or 2. Yeah, typically, if you're just talking about like why we're live earlier, it's not just because I want to be a Destiny waiting room. It's also the fact that American streamers are lazy and they don't like to wake up at a reasonable time. Lol. So if you guys are at work and you're working your butts off, then I might as well come and join you, drink my caffeine and stream, and we might as well hang out together until all the lazy streamers. Destiny. I'm kidding. He streams for longer. But the point is that if all the other streamers go live at 2, then I might as well wake up with you guys. I'm awake anyways. You guys are at work, you're hanging out, you need a little bit of entertainment. I'll give you a little bit of entertainment. And then at 2 or 3, when like a dozen streamers go live, you can pick your favorite and you can go hang out with them. So no big deal. So let's just break down what we've heard so far. They want to talk about taxes. The effective tax rate should be more for a billionaire than a firefighter. But Andrew Schultz is saying that oftentimes the middle class rich, like let's say that you have $2 or $3 million, right? For all of us and for me, that's like the dream, right? I don't want to be a billionaire, right? I want to be a multimillionaire. I want to be able to have my house paid off. I want to be able to have a business that I can then run, that I can then pass on to my family. That's what I want. I don't want to run a commercial empire. I don't want to be a billionaire. I don't want any of that kind of stuff, because I think those people, even if they're very hands off, their stress levels have to be through the roof to the point that they want to die, right? Whereas with multimillionaires, I'm sure that they're kind of furious that not only do they get hit at a 33% effective tax rate from the federal government if they're declaring those millions of dollars as income, but then also if they live in a state like New York or California, they get hit with an additional 5 to 10% of income tax. And so effectively, they're seeing 50% of their paycheck going out, the middle rich, right? Whereas the billionaires and the multi-millionaires who hang out with billionaires, they've figured it out where they take their millions upon millions of dollars and billions of dollars and they put them into investment and business vehicles. And then they pay people who are very intelligent, like tax accountants and all that kind of stuff, in order to reduce their liability to the point that they're either paying capital gains taxes. If they're dumb, by the way, this is how dumb rich people do it. They sell off stock or parts of their stock portfolio, and then they pay a 20% effective tax rate, or they just take out low interest loans from banks. And so as a result, they pay no taxes. And so what Andrew Schultz is saying, the middle rich and the middle class feel like they're getting fleeced. Meanwhile, the people who are rich enough to avoid the tax code aren't getting hit. Pete Buttigieg is agreeing, but he's also discussing like why that is and how we should fix that, I guess. So when he asks, like, what are the things that you think taxes are paying for? He's going to start describing cell phones, which I think is brilliant. I can't wait to hear what he has to say. But I was more thinking of like, what are the things that taxes pay for that the rich should pay for so it incentivizes a healthy and wholesome society? Let's see what Pete says, though.
Whenever somebody mentions a smartphone, they like start to pull it out of their pocket or touch it. But so the federal government could not have invented the iPhone, right? Like I don't think any of us would want a phone that was like invented by the federal government.
That thing would suck.
That is like all of the design, the manufacturing, supply chains. That's the kind of thing that corporations can do very well. Yeah. And Apple did it very well, and their competitors. But what makes the iPhone work? Well, among
Perfect. Sacred's Now 2 says, I work from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. EST, so this is perfect. It gets me through the end of the day. Awesome. Good. How about Social Security past 200K, increase it to 500K, or cool 1 million? Well, let's see what he's saying first.
Other things, the internet. The internet was literally invented by a federal research project. And it would never have been possible to invent the internet with a private company because you wouldn't have got the kind of capital return, even though it's $1 trillion idea or a multi-trillion-dollar idea. You know, companies can do multi-billion-dollar ideas, but $1 trillion idea, like inventing the internet, that requires basic research. And that's the kind of thing the government's supposed to do, among many other things.
It requires basic research? What does that
mean?
mean?
By basic research, I mean things that are so fundamental that you actually don't know for 50 or 100 years if they're going to have a return. They might never work out.
Oh, right? Yeah. You can't look at it as this thing is going to be profitable. It has to be
So it's different
benevolent
from
endeavor for society.
Yeah, it's different from research on like a pharmaceutical company researches a new medication, expecting that they're going to
there's going to have a return in the next 10, 20 years.
Right, at least kind of within the kind of profit, right?
Yeah. But public parks is another version of this and stuff like that.
Yeah,
you can't privatize the public park.
Right. This is the whole idea of public goods. Right? This is why we have governments, why we collect taxes.
God, we're turning into such libs already, dude.
But there's a handshake, right? There are the things that only the government can do, and then there are the things that the private sector can and should do. And they
Okay, I'm gonna tell you why I love this already. All right. I hope you're here partially for my commentary because, frankly, it's a substantive part of the show. Okay. So you're just gonna have to deal with the fact that I like to inject my opinion into the content every now and then. All right. So research that may not have a return on investment. Government is for $1 trillion ideas, not $1 billion ideas. He's already very simply articulating like counter libertarian bootstrap, like laissez-faire market BS. And I love it because there are things that the private market do better. And this is the essence of a liberal Democrat, right? A liberal Democrat isn't trying to completely destroy the American system, which plenty of people love America. They're just too busy living their normal lives to go onto Twitter to complain about how we need a socialist or fascist or Christian nationalist revolution. Plenty of Americans actually like America. I know that's like a shocking idea, but it's true, right? And so the government going for the $1 trillion ideas that may not have a strong return on investment, I think that's a simple way to articulate why the government is necessary when it comes to research projects. And then Andrew Schultz already jumps ahead to public goods. There isn't a way you as a working class or middle class person, I don't know about y'all, but I want to be able to walk up the street with my kids and go to a park and not pay an entrance fee because my bills are just paid for and I don't have that much extraneous cash. And I want my kids to be able to hang out with other kids and then play in a common area that is safe and maintained. Okay. And I also want kids, not just my kids, I also want poor kids to be able to do that as well. Right. But the truth is, you can do this through the private market, but the private market is going to charge a $10 entrance fee every time you go. And as a result, it's going to exclude working class people. And so what's going to end up happening is you're going to have this disparity between people who are getting paid a less than subsistence wage and people who can afford it. And so the people who can afford it are always going to say like, yeah, we could do this through the private market. But the people who can't afford it are going to say like, yeah, but what about my kids? What about my family? I'm the working class that makes your private institution function. Why do I not deserve basic dignity and a strong life? And so as a result, Andrew Schultz jumping ahead to public parks as a reason why government exists in the first place. Nailed it. 100%. Simple concept. Christian Valera says, you mean you don't think fraternal lodges would have been able to develop the iPhone? Good God, bro. Good God. Listen, Fabian was like fun. This is a reference to the Tim Pool debate that I did. Fabian Liberty is a perfectly nice guy in person or whatever. And like we have like good banter and obviously we still butt heads on everything. No, I do not think fraternal societies would be sufficient in order to provide the goods required for a functioning society. Yeah, about as well as a Soviet car, said Sacred's Now too. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Too much public is bad. Too much private is bad. We actually need a healthy synthesis of both.
They meet in the middle. But if you start shorting, and part of what really worries me right now about this kind of war on academia, and there are some things about academia that need to change, but the war on academia, the cuts to cancer research, the cuts to science research, this kind of like general anti-science like atmosphere that I think is emanating from the administration, like that costs us in ways that don't show up on, you know, a corporate profit and loss statement 6 months from now or a year from now. But in terms of whether a country, a society, an economy is productive and is growing and is innovating, that starts to really cost you over time. And if we're shorting that, or if corporations and extremely wealthy people don't want to be paying into that through taxes, that is, I think, a classic example of a kind of short-term gain that causes long-term pain.
Yes.
And I'm really worried about that.
And I think that's why there seems to be a lot of support for the administration right now, or one reason why, and even support for the administration when it comes to tariffs. You know, when the tariffs happen and you hear about like the stock market being deeply affected, most Americans are not invested in the stock market. So they're like, I don't give a fuck. Oh, rich people are losing some money, or 50%. We can go off the numbers. Meaning there's a large swath of Americans that don't feel directly.
Right, but here's the thing, right?
Impacted.
Tariff. So part of what's happening is the markets are responding to their belief that the tariffs will probably make the world economy less productive and make a recession more likely. But a tariff is a tax that people pay on stuff they buy every day, and proportionally, if you're what'd you call it, middle rich, versus like people in the neighborhood I grew up in South Bend, Indiana.
Sure.
Like proportionally, it's the people in Indiana who are spending a much bigger portion of their income at, let's say, Walmart. And everything at Walmart is about to get more expensive.
You're 100% right. I'm talking about the knee-jerk emotional reaction when you see like people who have money and have seemingly left you behind as they've gotten richer start to suffer a little bit. You go, yeah, I don't really care if you're suffering. In the same way that like when the Palisades fires happened, there was this sentiment of like, oh, a rich person's third home is on fire. They'll figure it out. Not this person's entire like life and belongings just went up in smoke. So I think that there is this like sentiment amongst a lot of Americans. You probably experienced it where you're from, just this kind of being like left behind. And I think this taxation of these corporations is a perfect example that really justifies that sentiment. It's like, why are you using the American marketplace and the support that we've given you and the lack of regulation? There's a reason why these companies don't sprout up in other countries, right? They sprout up here. And it's not just because they happen to be these unique, smart individuals, is because there is this marketplace that allows them to thrive here. You don't get to remove the headquarters so that you can not pay your fair share of taxes that's going to then support the next generation of people who do the same thing. But how do you tax them? What do you do?
So this is interesting that Andrew Schultz is making these arguments, because effectively this used to be the descriptive Democratic argument, okay? Before we got into transes and gays and bathroom bills and BLM and all that kind of stuff, there actually used to be a healthy chunk of discussion about like economic justice on the left. And I know that like leftists and progressives and even some Democrats will get pissed off and they'll be like, Connor, we still talk about that all the time. But the truth is that we have to evaluate this in the way that it's being received. And the truth is that I guess that Democrats are just too lab coaty about it. They just describe things in ways that are not easily consumed by people. And that's like a major challenge. That's like a massive challenge, right? So most people aren't invested in the stock market, or 50% of the people are. Listen, I'm not going to lie. I'm just going to be real with y'all. Okay. I'm going to be real and I'm going to be transparent. I have a retirement account. It is very minimally contributed to. The reason why it's very minimally contributed to is because so far, for the past decade of my life, by having 2 kids, by buying my parents' property, et cetera, I haven't had a lot of extraneous income, okay? I don't have an extra $500, an extra $1,000 a month, right? And the few times that I did, number one, I paid off debt. Number 2, I made investments in business opportunities that I want to pay off in the long term, but they're not paying off immediately. And so as a result of that, I'm hoping that, not only can I create content, not only can I be a good employee, not only can I get rev share from, a successful YouTube company, et cetera, I effectively don't, I'm just gonna be real, I don't have a retirement plan, okay? I don't. My retirement plan is to be more successful in the next 5 to 10 years than I am right now. That's my retirement plan. And then once I get that level of success, then I can start contributing to a retirement plan or start making investments. So he's right that for me, if the stock market takes a hit, I'm working for the next 30 or 40 years anyways. Okay. It doesn't matter. Good economy, bad economy. If I'm a YouTuber or if I'm working at Home Depot for $12 an hour, it doesn't really matter. I'm working for the next 30 years. Okay. So it is what it is, right? Now, Pete does this thing that I'm a little not annoyed. I'm a little annoyed by it. I'm not going to lie. So he's right to point out that a tariff is going to affect consumer goods. That's going to hit people who shop at Walmart way more than it's going to hurt people who live on Wall Street or work on Wall Street, right? That's a good point. But a lot of politicians do this thing like, when I grew up in South Bend, Indiana, when I grew up in a small town outside Sacramento, when I grew up in Mississippi. And I'm not going to lie. Like, obviously, Brianna Wu does this. Brianna Wu's a friend. I still like Brianna, et cetera, except. But whenever you say that shit where it's like, I grew up around working class people, it's like, I don't give a fuck. Like, I'm not going to lie. I don't find it. Yeah, Scranton, Pennsylvania. When Joe Biden's like, yeah, when I was growing up around the coal miners in Scranton, Pennsylvania. And it's like, bro, you've been a blue blood for 40 years. Okay. You've been raking it in with investments for 40 or 50 years. You think that I think that just because you were born in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and it was a coal mining town that the Bidens know about what it's like to get black lung from the mines? No offense. Sorry, Ken. Sorry, Ma. Sorry, Jesus. Sorry, God. Go fuck yourself, right? Like, you're lying, right? You're lying, okay? So don't hit me with the I grew up in a small town, blah, blah, blah. I don't believe you, right? I don't believe you. Oh, sorry. That was just when he was like where I grew up in South Bend, Indiana. I know he was coached to say that, right? I know he was coached to say that. Andrew Schultz addresses something that I think that's important, which is effectively that a lot of working class and middle class folk who are on the lower class, we don't sympathize with like giga rich people because it's like, oh, okay, your third house burned down, cry me a river, right? Like my parents, not my parents. My parents are doing great. But my parents died of cancer, and part of the reason why the way my mom died was we weren't able to afford the medication so she could get treated for her diseases because her insurance only covered so much. So as a result, it bankrupted my parents, right? The equity that I was going to inherit from my parents in order to have intergenerational wealth, it was sucked up by the medical establishment in order to take care of my 60-year-old mother, who then died. And we tried to do everything we could in order to save her, but it destroyed the equity of my parents' home. And as a result, we have no wealth in our family, right? None of those people want to hear about your third house in Los Angeles burning. Nobody gives a shit, right? So Andrew Schultz, sorry for being so profane, but Andrew Schultz correctly points that out, right? So Sacreds Now says, maybe I'm privileged, but I've never felt any pressure to consistently meet the company matching percent. When I had the opportunity, I matched. Again, I'm not going to be able to retire off of what's in my 401k. My 401k is pretty minned out, but I did match. Silver Jacket Man says, plus the average age in these blighted towns is like 50. Nobody young lives there, statistically speaking. It's sad, but it is what it is. True. Crazy economy. The Silver Jacket Man says that is the case for the most part. There's probably a small percentage of systemic poverty, but yeah, you're in 2025 still looking for manufacturing to come back. Yeah, it's kind of cope, isn't it? One of my favorite graphs is they show manufacturing through the entire 20th century as we had tariffs and didn't have tariffs. And no matter what, we still saw manufacturing reducing at almost a 45-degree angle over the entirety of the 20th century, regardless of policy. Conservative liberalism says, sure, I've been raking it in for 40 years, but let me tell you about Corn Pop. He was a bad dude. Yeah, exactly, right? Like, dude, when you're 20 or 30 and you just left your working class roots 5 years ago, then I think it's relevant. But if you're like 50 or 60 and you've been like rubbing elbows with millionaires for like 30 or 40 years and you have substantive investments, nah, I'm not buying that working class shenanigans. Sacreds Now says, nobody wants to work the manufacturing jobs we're sending away for immigrants. Nobody is going to put away the iPhones. We're hurting our consumers. Yeah. So what's interesting, Sacreds Now makes a really good point. I promise I'll get back to the content. But there was actually a Pew, I don't know if it was Pew or Gallup or something like that, but there was a research poll that came out recently where they said, do you think it's good to bring manufacturing jobs back to the United States of America? And the approval rating was like 80%. And then the follow-up question was, do you want to work those manufacturing jobs? And the answer was like 20%. So like everybody wants manufacturing back in the United States, but nobody actually wants to like rivet cars together for 12 hours a day. Right? Kind of funny how like we just have this vision of the Rust Belt before it was the Rust Belt, manufacturing cars, and we're like, yeah, that should be the heartbeat of America. But then when push comes to shove and you're like, hey, do you want to become a part of the industrial heartbeat of America? The answer is like, no, that's for poor people. It's crazy. All right. You guys are having fun, but I do need to feel like I need to move on. Your mom passed away. Then who is watching the live stream, and why do you constantly apologize for being profane? No, my mom's still with us. I was just being hyperbolic. I was using it as an example. There are families that are bankrupted by cancer in late age.
Look at what's about to happen, right? Like as we speak, congressional Republicans are working on a budget framework that's going to cut corporate taxes. Like that's one of the biggest things it's going to do. And even this president, you know, the least popular he ever was last time around was when they passed his tax cuts for corporations and the wealthy. So a lot of this is about, look,
can I ask a question about that real quick?
Yeah.
Is there a world where, and I doubt that this is possible, but is there a world where if they do that, it will influence companies that have gone abroad with their headquarters to come back here?
I think it's
I'm not just trying to defend the
No,
administration,
I get that argument. But honestly, there are ways to structure taxes so that they capture where the value and the wealth is actually created. Like you can have a PO box in the Bahamas or Ireland or whatever. But so one of the things, for example, that happened in the last administration was an international agreement on like a threshold, a minimum, so that, and now it only works if everybody agrees on it. This is part of why diplomacy matters so much, right? But no other country really wants to see too much of that happening either. So there's a way to create a floor that gets you a more level playing field.
An international agreement for taxation of corporations.
Yeah, the
even if your account is in Switzerland, if you have $1 trillion in Switzerland or the Cayman or whatever, you're a trillionaire. You're going to get taxed as such.
Exactly. So it reduces the incentive to offshore your books.
Now, kind of seems like you're making the argument for a tariff on Lesotho. Right?
Why? I don't know why they're beating up on Lesotho.
No. I think the justification for that was so that someone can't go put a manufacturing factory
fine. And
on
look,
the place.
Tariffs have their place, right? I mean,
we're not thinking about tariffs yet, but just on the taxation.
But again, what really worries me about tariffs is those don't amount to a tax on corporations.
They amount to a tax on consumers. Without a doubt.
May I push back? Sorry, I want to push back. And this is something Andrew brought up on a call that I completely agree with. And I'm an idiot. But I feel when people say these things, oh, the buck gets passed on to the consumer. That only happens because the corporations have exploited profits to the highest possible degree to keep their share price as high as possible. Things have gotten more expensive over the past 50 years, every year. It's not just inflation. I think corporate greed is a big part of that. So why is it that now that there's a tariff, their profit has to stay the exact same and nobody's looking at them as perpetrators of any kind of greed? And it's just, oh, the United States government is deciding here's a measure to help middle America, and now we have to eat that.
But how is making middle America pay more a measure to help middle America, right? I mean,
well, I would, and I do think I get more frustrated with Democrats because I want very badly to be that. I definitely do not identify as conservative, but I find there's this. When I go to Middle America, and I'm sure you go there. We travel the country. Yeah, you live there. Yeah, that's what I meant to say. But it's like, oh, there's like decay in some of these places, and it doesn't feel like the party that I want to identify with has any empathy for them. And this, to me, was an idea that could help bring jobs back there. And I don't think the execution has been great from what I'm seeing, but this could help them. Why don't we look at any measure that could help them beyond let's keep things the way they are? Because the way status quo is not helping.
Yes, I agree on that. Yeah, I think that's really important. And I think what my party has to do is respond to this in a way that doesn't make it sound like our whole argument is let's just go back to 2024, right? Like things like this, moments like this.
So hold on. They're making really good points. Let's address that though. Silver Jacket Man says, purely anecdotal, but my old man drove Biden around in the 70s once as a cabbie. He said he was actually a really down-to-earth, cool guy, as my old man was a diehard Republican. Listen, I have criticisms of the Biden family, but my criticisms of the Biden family apply to all of Washington, D.C., which is effectively that once you get into D.C., And Lord knows I want to get into DC because Lord knows I want it. But what happens is you start rubbing elbows with the right people. As a result of that, because people, if you're a congressman or a senator or a president or a vice president, what happens is people want to be in your good graces because they know that you're close to power. So as a result, they start offering your relatives easy, no-show, lucrative jobs like Hunter Biden was offered internationally. And what ends up happening is sleazebags. I think that, I'm just going to be real, the way that I was raised is you need to be productive 40 hours a week. That's the way that I was raised. The way that I was raised was a third of your life you're going to spend sleeping. A third of your life should be dedicated to family and hobbies. A third of your life is going to be spent working at minimum. And realistically, if you need to survive and you need to work 50 to 60 hours a week in order to get by, it is what it is. Life is hard. That's the way that I was raised. So when I see an entire class of people who are from the middle class and the working class, but they get pushed into DC, and then what happens is effectively all of their family get employed at no-show, highly lucrative jobs. I don't view myself as politically or socially connected to those people anymore. They're making criminal amounts of money for almost no work. What they're really selling is their nepotism and clout, and they're lining their family's pockets with effectively what I would view as a soft form of corruption. So the Biden family, in my opinion, was guilty of that. And so are many people in DC. I think it's wrong. I think it's spiritually caustic for our country. And so just because the Bidens aren't the worst offenders, because the Trumps are guilty of this too, doesn't mean that they're above criticism, right? And so what I do think about Joe, though, is that Joe is a liar and a hypocrite in a regard that I think is still respect worthy, which is effectively, he said that he wasn't going to pardon his son. Ultimately, he did. But I can tell, based off of the way that he talks about it, it wasn't because he was trying to, get one over on the American people necessarily. It's because he legitimately did not want his son his only surviving son. His other son's dead from cancer, and he lost a daughter in childhood. He wanted his only surviving son to not be in prison for the rest of his life, which I sympathize with as a father. It's criminal. It's bad. You should be able to criticize it. But at the end of the day, he was like, I'm a dad. I'm not going to watch my only surviving son be in prison for the rest of his life because Trump goes after him. It's hypocritical and it's a lie, but I'm a father as well. I understand it. So Matt Wiggum says, tax cuts barely change revenue. This guy is making up stupid myths, as well as his philosophy isn't against tax cuts. But you have to understand that this is a narrative in the fiscal conservative right wing. You have to understand that it's told to fiscal conservatives, regardless of whether or not it's true, that if we reduce our taxes, more American companies will be comfortable doing business in the United States. As a result, the pie of revenue will grow, and therefore tax revenue will increase. I agree that it's probably a myth. I'm saying that that is what is a common talking point in the right. K Soko says, what a base level-headed take on Biden, Connor. Well, thank you. I try. Bud123 it says, if I went to DC, I will join Thomas Massey on the no votes. Sure. Take Trump speaking with Bill Maher. Who gives a fudge if he was nice to him? Yep. Meanwhile, he doesn't acknowledge one of his only surviving son's daughters. People are multifaceted. Of course. Complains about not being able to prosecute J6 committee and constantly talks about the Biden crime family. Yeah, I wouldn't leave my son to the whims of the Trump administration either. I wouldn't do that. Of course. Now, here's the thing is, unfortunately, I think the Schultz podcast is representative of the median disaffected voter. And so that guy says, I travel through the Rust Belt, and Trump at least talks about helping these people. In execution, I don't think he has helped these people. But as a result, I'm sympathetic to his plan, and I want to do anything in order to help the gutted Rust Belt. Well, the truth is that Democrats used to talk about this, and they don't talk about it as much anymore. And if they want to regain the votes of males, they need to talk about the economic injustice in the United States of America. And it can't be socialism. It has to be dignified work, dignified wages. Okay. Fair work, fair pay. Bud123 says, when are you running for office, Connor? K-Soko says, vote for Connor. Listen, guys, I'm not going to lie. We're not going to, we're not going to get a congressional seat with 40 viewers on Twitch, okay? One project at a time. Let's be real, okay?
Movements like the one that's in charge of the White House right now don't spring up in a country or an economy where everything's going along fine. And look, I lived this too. I grew up in South Bend, Indiana. People think South Bend, they know Notre Dame.
Notre Dame, yeah.
The big employer that propelled South Bend wasn't Notre Dame. It was Studebaker. Studebaker made cars. It was before the big three, it was the big four. And we were one of them. It dominated our city, grew our city. And then in 1963, they shut down. That's 20 years before I was born. And we were still dealing with it 20 years later. We were still dealing with it 50 years later when I became the mayor there at the age of 29. And what had happened was, I mean, when we were going to school, I would go in between just acres of collapsing factories that literally looked like a war zone. I have been to war zones that look very similar to the way a lot of places in the industrial Midwest, like where I grew up, looked because of some of these things you're talking about.
Right. Which
is why I think there's an appeal to saying we're going to bring back manufacturing, right? And by the way, again, I don't want to like move away from what I was saying that we shouldn't go back to where we were, because I think a lot needs to change. But I would point out that in our entire lifetime, the year when there was the most investment in factories in the United States, the most factories being built, was last year. Because there were a lot of policies, the chip stuff, the manufacturing stuff, trying to get more of the green economy stuff to be built on US soil, that led to a lot of these factories. Now, a lot of them are still in construction as we speak. Some of them actually open, some of them still haven't. But right now in Kokomo, Indiana, I just read a story today about 370 workers at Stellantis who just got laid off. Auto workers who got laid off because of the tariffs. So this is a tool that you can use for sure. But it's absolutely critically important that you know what you're doing when you do. And if you're just making shit up as you go along, or if you're doing it for a reason that's actually less about helping middle America and more about consolidating power, which is what I think is actually happening. We can get into that.
Yeah.
Then it's not going to work. But I don't want to completely disagree with what you're saying earlier. Like, yeah, part of what's happening.
Pete's a yapper. I'm a yapper too, okay? I sympathize with Pete. Bud123 says, "Oh, come on, man! You'll get way more votes than viewers on YouTube, Twitch." Listen, I appreciate the enthusiasm, but the truth is, I believe in working incrementally. Okay, so Warhammer channel is doing great. I love the Warhammer channel. It brings in a healthy chunk of revenue. I love working for Valor. I want to help them build. I'm actually trying to talk to some of the back end people today in order to see if I can help them on the back end so we can build up the metrics across the board for the entire channel. But the truth is that I'm dedicating the next 6 months to this project, okay? So for the next 6 months, I'm going to try to be live 20 to 25 hours a week, and I'm going to try to get people good content that's worth watching and informs you and is insightful and is intelligent and is great. And so I parasocially love every single one of you in chat. I really do. Just hanging out for a minute, liking the stream, watching until you can't watch anymore because work is calling you away. I really do appreciate it. It's great. But in my opinion, if I can't get, 500 people, right, to watch me on a routine basis in order to be mildly entertaining while doing simple commentary on current events, news, and politics, I don't think I would trust myself to run a congressional district. Now, there's plenty of morons who are congressmen, so maybe I would just do it anyways. But the truth is that in order to be successful in very complex tasks, I want to be successful in less complex tasks first. That's the way my brain works, right? So appeal to the 40K crowd, make custodies male again. But that's my point. We're all like 3,000 IQ autists here, you know? So you can't expect it all to come from the Warhammer community, right? They're also a small slice of the population. K-Soko says, yeah, with 40 constituents, you could have enough rural power to dominate a state's politics and gerrymander the maps. If we were in Wyoming, was the joke that somebody posted earlier, right? Get to 500 consistent viewers. Maybe you need a co-host or have more guests and network harder. Yeah, of course. We need to dial it in as things go, right? I agree. So no problems. We'll build it. It's not a problem. However, you know, we need time and we need to have small victories in order to have good victories, right? Or small victories to have big victories.
Happening is like a part of why things cost more is that they actually cost more. But also we've seen a lot of expansion of the corporate profits that people cash in on, right?
Yeah.
Which help to explain why a lot of things cost more.
I'm going to fast forward just because tariffs is a little bit more dry, right? And it's not that it's not relevant. Of course, it's relevant. It's just dry, right? The main thing that we want, obviously, is tariffs are dumb, but neoliberalism isn't completely working in order to tax people enough that the federal government has a decent revenue base that's predictable. And then we obviously do need to continue some level of the military-industrial complex, but it does not need to be as expensive as it is right now. And then we need to invest in the Rust Belt and America in order to create vibrant domestic economies that have cities that people actually want to live and work in. Boom. End of story. Pete and I could break bread on this. We're good. You know, Pete and I could be friends. I could get a beer and talk policy with Pete, right? So let's move on to finger wagging, compassion, and the Democratic direction, followed by AOC and Bernie's messaging, because that is more about culture war, power struggle, et cetera, et cetera. Liquid's Back says, if you were president, would you repeal the Patriot Act? Oh, man, I'm sorry to disappoint you with a $2 dono. No. Listen, I'm like a military chauvinist, okay? I'm not going to lie. Let me explain real quick, all right? The Patriot Act. Let's take a look. The criticisms of the Patriot Act are that the government has undue spying power on the American people. Patriot Act summary. The USA Patriot Act, enacted in 2001, is a law that significantly expanded the search and surveillance powers of federal law enforcement and intelligence agencies, primarily in response to the September 11 terrorist attacks. The act made numerous changes to existing laws, expanded surveillance, access to records, information sharing, immigration and anti-terrorism measures, increased penalties. So what you would need to tell me, Liquid's Back, because I don't want to disappoint you too much, okay? You need to tell me what part of the Patriot Act you would want to repeal, okay? Because if you're like, I don't like when the government watches me, I'm going to be vulgar. Sorry, Mom. Sorry, Ken. Sorry, God. I don't like when the government looks at what kind of porn I'm looking at. Okay, number one, stop looking at crazy porn. Number two, I don't care if the NSA knows what porn you look at, because the truth is they're not using that as a part of a terrorism investigation, right? So what I need to know is what part of it makes you uncomfortable? What part of it do you want repealed? Gen X says, you'll have to get on TikTok to reach the young men you're looking for. They hang out there watching Dean and Parker argue with MAGAs. Yeah. That's actually part of what I want to talk to the backend people about. Indulge me a rant, okay? Because I parasocially love every single one of you, and I want to explain to you what we're doing here logistically as well as purpose, right? So right now, if I was trying to build up the Valor Media Network, there's a bunch of podcasts, no offense to the other hosts, but they're 40 to 60-year-old men who are talking about war, conflict, self-development, right? And so what they need, because they're confusing the signal about what Valor is, because they have different messages and different targets, is they need individual channels as well as the main channel, right? So the main channel needs to be posting content the way that it is, but they need to have their own channels so they can build up their own brand and their own social media relevance. So each sub channel should have its own YouTube channel, and right now they don't. Then each sub channel and the main channel needs Twitters and Instagrams, right? And so every time content is going live or being posted, it needs to be posted to those Instagrams and those Twitters, in my opinion, in order to raise awareness. And then also somebody needs to be given those social media accounts so they can shit post in that brand's name, right? Because the way that you get attention, hate to say it, is shit posting. Then once that infrastructure is built up, the existing content needs to be cut up into decently edited long form content where you get a highlight reel before the videos. That way people know what they're digging into when they're watching the VODs. And then also we need to be cutting up shorts, and we need to post them to YouTube, and we need to post them to TikTok, like you said. And then finally, I think we need to be live on every relevant live stream platform. So Valor needs to be live on Twitter. It needs to be live on TikTok, if TikTok's live. It needs to be live on Rumble, and it needs to be live on Kick. And everything needs to get posted to all of those websites. And so there's a ton of back-end work that needs to go into that. And until we do that, I think that we're effectively stuck in first gear. So I'll be talking to the social media team today in order to see if we can, if I can help with some of that stuff, because it seems like they vaguely know that that is where we need to be. But the proactive steps that need to get done, it doesn't seem like anybody's like grabbing it by the horns and then creating accounts and creating passwords and figuring it out how to post content and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't seem like there's that. They know what's going on. They know what needs to be done, but there isn't somebody taking charge and charging at the target as aggressively as possible. And I wouldn't mind doing that on top of creating content. So I'm going to offer my services in that regard. People want government to work for them better as well. There's a reason that Ezra Klein and Jon Stewart clip hit so hard. True. If we don't have a Patriot Act, then we're not a country. Oh, come on, come on. 9/11 happened due to siloing of intel agencies. The Patriot Act is wholly unnecessary. And in order to live in a perfectly safe world, we need to accept a security state instead. Ben Franklin has a quote about it. That's still too vague for me. Sacreds Now says they absolutely need SM managers. Seems like social media managers. Like Bobby is the only one I've ever seen attempting to network. Yeah, I kind of agree with you. And that's the other thing too. So you're angling for an officer position in Valor? Yeah, probably, to be honest. And then Sacreds Now says they absolutely need social media managers. Yeah, the other thing is the cross-pollination. So not only do we need to cross-pollinate between Valor contributors, we also need to, we all have friends, right? I'm friends with Lauren Southern. I'm friends with Destiny. I'm friends with who else? Aristocracy, although she's not as active as she used to be. I'm friends with Wick TV. I'm friends with, or even if you say friends, if you're like, you're not really friends, you're just social media acquaintances, that's totally fine. Dev, Short Fat Otaku. I'm friends with, I'm trying to think of another, I used to be friends with Sitch and Adam. There's plenty of interesting people that we could reach out to in the alternative social media space where we could cross-pollinate the older creators on Valor and get them into debates and conversations with kind of like the alternative media, new media people. And then, yeah, Dylan Burns, perfect example, right? And then we could cross-pollinate between this new alt media scene and the Valor creators. And then, so we would create cross-pollination, not just between them within the network, but also with people outside the network. What was another thing? Midas Touch. This is an offshoot of Midas Touch. Why aren't we having like collaborations between Midas Touch creators and Valor Media creators? Now, of course, they've all talked about this, but somebody needs to grab it and make it happen. And everybody's so busy that nobody's grabbed it yet. So your bigger creator fans are going to endorse Connor for Congress? Well, I mean, I hope so. I distance from Destiny and Lauren Southern, given that Valor is trying to accomplish, to be honest. Yeah, of course. But the point is that you just try to get it in front of as many eyeballs as possible, right? You can make arguments for like this creator would be better for the mission, et cetera, et cetera. But the point is to get it in front of as many eyeballs as possible, right? Conservative liberalism says, I just don't think surveilling of free people is part of the purview of government. Should they stream open all USPS correspondence too? Read it all just in case, like we're all military. I would have to go over signals intelligence, and I don't think that's relevant to the content we're currently consuming. But anyways, I gave y'all like a 30-second, 2-minute overview over the social media strategy that I think needs to be grabbed and attacked on behalf of Valor Media. Let's get back into the content for now.
This administration, but I do like that it kind of shone a light on something that didn't seem like it was getting talked about by either party, which is there is a lot of decay happening, which I do. That's one thing I have a lot of hope for you, is that you live there, you reside over it, you've experienced it, and you speak to it. And I sometimes wonder if you get frustrated. You have to, I mean, you can find a more diplomatic way of saying it, but have you been frustrated at all with the way that it's worded amongst the Democratic Party, where it seems like it's a lot more identity politics, which matters, but not, to me, it's not as prescient as, I don't know, some people are pressing as people who can't afford to feed their families and are losing jobs.
Yeah, especially because like there are a lot of people that I think Democrats are understood to care about. Like low-income people, Black and brown people are like disproportionately caught up in the economic pain when something like this happens. And so I do think my party needs to do a much better job, especially with the kind of finger wagging prone to that. And I've seen it happen on any side. I think a lot of people, you get you get this sense of like moral conviction, and you're so sure of it that you start to think it makes it okay to be an asshole, because because you're deep down, like the thing, and this is like far right and far left movements through the ages, but I think it's definitely true of far right and far left in the U.S. right now. You just think like you can treat people however you want, you say whatever you want about them, because like
they're evil.
They're evil, and if they win, all is lost.
And their pain becomes intellectualized. Like you'll see like think pieces of like, why does the South love MAGA? Like how can we like why is neo-Nazism on the rise through like a chart? And I feel like it misses the feeling of, you know, low income people saying like, no, we're in pain.
Yeah. And I think pain is a really important place to start, because like if you encounter somebody in pain and you approach that with compassion and you actually listen, that's a very different place to come from than like, either how can I use this, or how am I going to judge the choices that this person made while in pain? Yeah. Especially if they have developed, very understandably, a distrust of everybody. Yeah. Right.
So what are things the Democratic Party can do better? Because like, I like you go speak to both sides.
Dude, we've begged so many Democrats to come on this platform.
You were the only guy that agreed, and then you had to back out, allegedly, because you had to do debate prep.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that's cute. That's cute. Dude, I think Pete's killing it so far. So I want to hear more of what he has to dig into, but this is obviously like, this is the fight in the Democrat Party. This is the fight, Democratic Party, my wife always points out. This is the fight in the Democratic Party is identity politics versus economics. Poor people, black and brown people, Pete automatically identifies as being the people that Democrats auto care about. But when you feel that you're so correct, it's okay to be an a-hole. I'm guilty of this, guys. I'm not going to lie. I'm guilty of this. It's been so obvious that the MAGA presidency has been such a disaster. And all of the apologia that Never Trump Republicans and centrists did running up to the MAGA presidency was infuriating to me, because I effectively knew, I didn't think it was going to be this bad, but it was actually like, it was legitimately infuriating seeing all the apologia and sweeping for MAGA, that I got furious and I started being an a-hole. And the truth is that I get positive feedback from being an a-hole. When I say MAGA is stupid, MAGA is sweeping, Trump's a moron, Trump's a dirtbag, JD Vance is smarter than this, he's being evil, blah, 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 blah. A whole bunch of Democrats and never Trumpers and centrists are like, yeah, Connor, you get them. And I'm like, yeah, fudge those guys. But what happened is I had 2 or 3 centrist friends, no offense to them, but they were sweeping for MAGA, and they stopped talking to me basically because I was no longer willing to tolerate their steelmans of MAGA. So it's kind of true that when you do this kind of stuff, when you become an a-hole, you can rally your tribe, which is good for politics, but you can also alienate potential allies. I think that's an obvious insight that we should all check ourselves on. Sorry.
That seems like a big deal.
I'm glad it worked out.
Sorry, let me check it out.
Allegedly, because you had to do debate prep.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
That seems like a big deal.
I'm glad it worked out in the end.
Good excuse.
What we've been trying to do is like Mark Cuban, who was obviously a surrogate for the party, and he came on, he was fantastic. But like everybody we asked is, you know, they just wouldn't do it.
Yeah, look, there's this even like going on.
I don't want to get away from Alex's question.
No, but I mean, to your point, like part of it is like, where do we go? Right. To me, especially after we lose, our party or any party has this debate of like, what do we have to say and how do we say it? To me, there's actually 3 things we need to deal with. What do we have to say? I mean, like the policies, the ideas. If they're right, we should hold to it. If we're not so sure they're right, we should rethink them. Right, so there's that. Then there's how do we say it? That's the tone, the message, the style, whether people feel like you're wagging a finger at them or not, whether people think you get the kind of pain they're going through or not, right? And then the part nobody talks about is where we say it. And I think right now where we say it is kind of everything, because there are so many spaces where people, like I'm sure you don't think yourselves as maybe a political show or a news show. Yeah. Like the reality is there's probably a lot of folks who like this is where they're getting their news because like they're not sitting watching CNN. I mean, I remember the moment when I was back in college that I realized I was getting more of my news from the Daily Show than I was from like news sources, right? And so I think it's really important for anyone practicing politics, and definitely my party after what just happened to it, to be saying, okay, where else do we need to be? And like, it's all well and good for me to keep going on Fox News, and I will, although they don't seem to be inviting me as much lately. But you know, a lot of
he just called y'all pussy.
I like that.
Talk your shit, Pete.
I'm just saying, like, we were really close to having a conversation about the whole like signal gate. To put the wrong dude on your classified.
And what happened? Then they canceled
it. Just didn't quite get around.
Was it debate prep?
So,
they were working on something.
They were busy. Yeah. But like, you know, a lot of people aren't watching left, right, or center. They're not watching like television, cable news all the time, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, my party has this illusion that we're the savvy ones about tech. And 15 years ago, we were, right? Like we were onto things like Facebook and social media, probably a little more than the right was, or we were there first. But at least since 2016, the Twitter election, like that has been true less, right?
Yeah.
So I think we need to be prepared to go everywhere, and that's always been my style. I mean, largely because I had to when I was first running for president. I would talk to anybody who would listen, which at first wasn't a lot of people, and I would go to any place that would have me. But you know, to go back a little bit in what I was saying, like I do think we also need to revisit like what it is we're offering, because if it sounds like what we're offering is, let's just go back. This isn't working out. Obviously, the terrorists are hurting people. He's consolidating absolute power. Like lots of things are bad about this, which is true. Therefore, let's go back to that.
But you have Bernie and AOC who clearly have a message that's resonating. Why isn't the party getting behind that?
So I think a lot of what they have to say will get more and more traction in the party, especially on the economic piece, right? This idea that you have a lot of regular people in regular life getting screwed over by the way things work. And if we don't have better services and fairer taxes, like we're just never going to get through that.
And it's thrown in their face. And it's thrown in their face quite often. Look how great Biden's economy is. Look at the stock market. And they're like, that doesn't affect me at all.
Yeah. This is probably the crux of it. So where does the party go? What do we do? What do we say? What are our policies? If our policies are correct, we double down. If they're not correct, we need to rethink them. How do we say it? What rhetoric do we use? Are we finger wagging nags? Where do we say it? Legacy versus alt media. And what I like about what Pete just said, it's pretty humble. I like it a lot, where he says, when I first started running for president, I would talk to anyone who would listen. And I love that, that admission of like humility that he probably started in like, you know, senior folks' homes. He went to, you know, VAs that had 10 people in it, right? And he would just do that. And there wasn't a lot of people in the beginning, but of course, because he's intelligent, charismatic, rhetorically gifted, etc., it built up into something real, where now I would say that just based off of this interview and other interactions I've seen, I would say he's probably my favorite Democrat. Like who else? Obama's gone. Okay. I have my criticisms of Obama, but to be honest, compared to modern politics, my criticisms of Obama are very minimal. Okay. Who else is there? AOC, in my opinion, is nowhere near as charismatic as Pete. Then Bernie Sanders is old as hell. And I also don't like that they're like closet socialists. Then we have, who else? We have like Karina Jackson or whatever her name was, who is actually like very white collar, highly educated woman who just talks ghetto for no reason. We got Chuck Schumer, who's been there since the time of the dinosaurs. You got Nancy Pelosi, who's on the verge of dying. You got Bashir. Don't even know who Bashir is, not being rude. You got Ro Khanna, right? You know, Ro Khanna is like a younger progressive, but he's probably too progressive and too lefty for me. We got who we should get, Jeb Bush. Please clap. Please, God, clap. What are your main criticisms of socialism? I think that the decommodification of basic human needs and workers owning the means of production, in order to enforce that by a state, the state would have to be so large in order to enforce those as daily parts of life. You effectively create a dystopian police state. There's no way. Like, the reason why the free market works is because ultimately human beings are allowed to interact with each other in the market as they are, as long as they're not committing crimes. And then when they're committing crimes, the government comes and stamps down on it. Whereas in in order to actually enforce every single employee in the United States having a stock investment in their company, and also that they have food, water, and shelter guaranteed, you would have to have a massive state apparatus. So I think that socialism just doesn't work in practice. And I think it becomes a dystopia. Still known as the 100% anti-gun guy. And that dude needs to eat meat, lift weights, go shooting, and talk to his enemies, or else he's going to be a black mark on the party going forward. Christian Blair says David Hogg can buzz right off unless he moderates like AOC. I mean, I think we just said the same thing almost. Ironside says, laugh at Jeb all you want, but I bet the timeline where he won the GOP primary in 2016 is a lot better than this one. Listen, I like Jeb. Jeb should have been president instead of George. We would have had a better America if Jeb was run first instead of George. The only way for socialism to work in a country as large as the U.S., if it's taken down to small scale, e.g. state level most and probably lower, yeah, I don't believe in it. I don't think it's possible. I don't think it's possible. Gen X says, I would take any Bush right now over Trump. Bring back Bush Republicans. Listen, you're talking to one. You're talking to one. Sacred Snow says, or Sacred's Now. Is it Sacred Snow or Sacred's Now? You tell me. Yeah, of all the people to get rid of, Pelosi and Schumer seem like they should be the magnets for what David is trying to do. Safe blue seats with geriatric feckless Dems. Kind of. Sacred Snow. Good. I'll say your name correctly going forward. A government too big already exists via your beloved Patriot Act. Yeah, but you weren't specific enough for me to contend with that. Anyways, so I like the humility from Pete. I like that he's intelligent enough to recognize these three priorities. I'm happy he's rhetorically gifted enough in order to articulate these to lay people and have lay people understand it.
Cereal's $10. Yeah.
What are we talking about?
I would feel deeply offended if I was them, especially when you throw that kind of support behind, one specific party. And I think that's why you saw a lot of them start to migrate. So then what do you do? Like, how do you get working class people back?
Well, first, I think we need to be more disciplined and louder about that economic message. So look, to be clear, we will be advancing policies that make sure you are economically better off. What does that mean? That means that you can, the one thing I think people do give us a lot of credit for is healthcare, but there's more to do on that, right? We're not going to let them tear up Obamacare. We're going to make sure that there is a fairer tax code, not just standing against the tax cuts for the rich that he's about to push through Congress, but actually having a tax code where there's not a benefit to a corporation, like moving billions of dollars overseas, where there's not a benefit to kind of hiding your worth, where you're not better off basically with wealth than work, which is where the tax code is right now. Yeah. I think, need to be much more clear about what we would provide in terms of services for people. We're the only country, I think maybe Papua New Guinea is the only other country in the world that doesn't do a policy for parental leave, some level of national guarantee that when you have a
Don't
kid,
start this, bro.
you will get leave.
Don't start this, man. I got people trying to have kids working at this company right here. we cannot recover from this financially.
Yo, that was funny. That was cute. I love that. So he's like, yo, don't be talking about that parental leave because he knows he's the one that's going to get taxed for it. So this is the message that didn't work, right? Because let's face it, the economic recovery under Biden, it was real, but it was anemic. It didn't have any blood flow. It didn't have any, muscles, it was very much like, okay, this isn't as bad as not working for months during COVID. That's what it was. It was like, okay, I'm working again, but everything is so expensive, I can barely afford it, right? So Pete, what I took away from him saying is fair wages for fair work. It was flaccid. Oh, that's a good word. Fair wages for fair work. I think that's good, like a dignified wage. And the thing is, you can't be appealing to bed blobs with this language, okay? You need to be appealing to workers, all right? Fair taxes for all. There are parasitic rich in the country who are taking advantage of the United States of America for their own benefit. Everyone recognizes this, including Trump, including MAGA. What are the government services that are actually going to be provided? Parental leave, because we want to encourage families. This is all fire so far. And the reason why, I'm going to make this argument from a social conservative standpoint, okay? Why don't you want families to make decent wages? Families that make decent wages are able to afford cars. They're able to afford their house. They're able to afford their utilities. They're able to put their kids through school. If you want a socially conservative society where partners stay together over the long term and take care of their kids, you need dignified wages, okay? So if you're a social conservative, fair wages should be something that you care about. Fair taxes for all. We all agree on that. There are some parasitic rich people. What are the government services? Okay, Bud123, I don't know if you're trolling me, but you're saying public school is free. Yeah, I get that public school is free. Are your kids able to make it to public school? Are they walking or are they taking a bus? That has to be reinforced financially. When they get to school, if you're broke as hell and you're barely able to afford food, are they having a nutritious meal before they get to school or when they get to school for breakfast so they're not dragging ass through the first part of the day? And then are they getting a decent lunch? Republicans are the ones who want to cut lunches because they're saying, well, you know, rich kids or middle class kids might not be able to get or might be getting free lunch that they don't need. So therefore, let's cut the entire program. And as a result, let's face it, you got disproportionately poor black and brown kids who don't have enough food in order to feel decent during the school day. And as a result, they're worse students. If you want black and brown kids to be good adults, then they have to be good students. If their parents are pieces of shit and they don't take care of them, then guess what? We're going to have to step in as a community and we're going to have to take care of them. Sorry, Bud123, if I'm popping off. I'm not trying to pop off at you. I'm just, you know, a little riled up about it. What are the government services that we're actually going to provide? I think that's a prioritization. I'm going to show you guys this real quick. This is like genuinely one of the things that I care about most, okay? This is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, okay? I've been over it before. I'll be over it another billion times by the time I die. So physical, security, social, ego, self-actualization. Physical is food, water, and shelter. This, I don't want to make this free. I want to make this easily accessible for everyone, okay? Safety, physical security. This should be the purview of government. If we have social services that we're going to cut, if we have services that we're going to cut, it needs to come up from these 3 tiers, not from these 2 tiers. This needs to be the government's focus. And then if we have money, once these 2 tiers are maximized across the country, then we help support social, ego, self-actualization. Okay? The social stuff, socialization is important. So I would realistically say the first 2 tiers, and you need to foster a community that supports these 2 tiers. It's like the most important psychological concept in the world. We need a Maslow's hierarchy Valor merch. We need to work on Valor merch. That's true. Sorry, there was somebody who was responding to the food comment. Bud123 says, if I was broke, I would have to take the bus and get crappy, unhealthy lunches. Exactly. Fund lunch in schools. It should never even be a debate. Republicans are sick in this regard. I agree. If you're a social conservative, you want happy, healthy, stable families. This shouldn't even be an argument. The argument is from fiscal conservatives who don't want to spend the money. And then it's from social conservatives who have been suckered in by the fiscal conservatives who basically say, well, you should be doing that already. Parents should be taking care of their kids already. You should already be making enough money in order for kids to have lunch already. And it's like, true, but what do you do for the kid who has shitty parents? Riddle me that, smart ass. Sorry, Ken. Sorry, Mom. Sorry, Jesus. Sorry, God. Liquid's back says, I think one thing is making sure that a religious person doesn't have to work on Sunday and miss church just to be able to pay bills. I agree. There should be a limitation. This would be my limitation. I think that 60 hours a week of work at minimum wage should be able to pay for you to survive. Like 100%. And even with a family, I think a full-time job plus a part-time job should equal being able to take care of a family on the poor side of town. Well, and I'm an agnostic, so I'm just trying to apologize for being vulgar. All right. Anyways, we all agree. We're all agreeing with each other in chat. So let's keep on with the content.
can be done. I promise. Because we did it when I was.
I think it's a great.
When I was mayor, we did it locally for city employees, and
we at our company we pay for anybody that wants to have their eggs frozen.
It's great.
We don't hire women though. But we will pay.
There's always a loophole.
Yeah.
There's always some type of loophole, dude. These middle rich. You know? We need to tax them.
No,
the cost of eggs are too high, bro.
Wow.
I tease.
See what you did.
But yes, we should absolutely pay for it.
But if you, sorry, I'll let you finish, and I had another question based on.
But I think there are also some things that we need to kind of rewire in the way government works to make it work better for people. And I lived this. So for example, I'm watching them basically burn the federal government down, and obviously I've got problems with the way they're destroying, cancer research or making it harder for the FAA to keep airplanes safe. Like, a lot of that is bad. But I will also admit that I have been furious and frustrated with the way things work in our federal government. And it's actually gotten to where it makes it harder to do things that I think progressives in particular care about. Building things, building housing, building roads and bridges, which I lived for 4 years, building clean energy projects, like stuff we should objectively definitely be doing. And we've gotten in our own way with these layers of process, layers of procedure, all of them introduced with good intentions, but which collectively have made it almost impossible or unaffordable to do anything.
So you want less regulations.
So we need they need to be smarter, and there needs to be less procedure. Still powerful regulations to keep people safe.
So there should be a department to make sure the government is efficient. I think that's like really a great. I think that's where you're going, and it's great.
This is another example.
Did you work on that in the private sector? Isn't that what?
Yeah.
What was that company that you worked for? The consultant company,
McKinsey.
Yeah. And isn't that partially like what governments will hire a company like that to do Doge stuff, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't call it. Again,
you're a fucking Doge, aren't you? You're such a Doge, dude.
If Doge was actually about government efficiency, I'd be all for it.
But it.
Ooh. George Santos sentenced to 87 months. I just wanted to mention that just because George Santos and Stephen Bonnell II, Destiny, had a really interesting, cool debate that will be posted as a VOD shortly to the channel. But the, what is it? 87 divided by 12, 7.25 years. I'm sure he'll be out in 3 or 4, right? He'll get good behavior. But 7 years for corruption. The dude's funny. He's charismatic. He's silly, but he allegedly got convicted of doing some seriously messed up stuff as far as like stealing money and wealth. K-Soko says, yes, we can. All schools should be feeding all the rich kids or poor same meals for all. What the fudge? Well, yeah, but you're getting to when the government does stuff, that's socialism. I don't know if you saw my debate on Prime Kai. I didn't post it to my channel because I knew I was going to be so mad. As soon as I saw that Admiral Gibbs was on the roster, I'm like, I'm going to violate TOS tonight. So I didn't even stream it. I didn't even record it. I'm not going to post it. But if you go check Prime Kai Reverie Roundtable, I effectively cussed this dude out for a prolonged period. Not very Valor behavior, by the way. Not very Valor Media Network PG-13 behavior. But basically, they were arguing that any government services were socialism. So, yeah. Pete about to run down the cheese grater in news articles for laughing at a women bad joke. Yeah, I doubt it. I hope not. That was funny. It was funny. Yeah, it was a good talk between George and Destiny. It was a fun debate. I liked it a lot. So is it socialism if the government provides police or fire services or any service? Unironically, this was my argument because it has nothing to do with decommodifying basic human needs or workers owning the means of production. And they argued that because once you have a sufficiently big government, you're providing all those services anyways, it's a step towards socialism. And I was like, pound sand, eat a bowl of bad things. Not allegedly, he was convicted. Yep, exactly. You're right, Gen X. That's a good correction. Yep. Let's watch the Doge segment. And then I'm gonna check my email real quick, just because I want to make sure that I'm meeting with these people today. Because creating content is important, but also so is making sure that we get the back end moving the way that it needs to be moving. So let me check this real quick. Switch account to Valor. Check the live section. Content live. And we did 5 hours on Tuesday. Oh, this is videos. Where's live content? Sorry. We did 5 hours yesterday. We did 5 hours a day before. We did 5 hours on Monday. So that's 5, 10, 15. We already did 20. So we already met the contract. So I'm going to watch a little bit more of Pete, and then I'm going to go harass the editors in order to see if I can get on a call with them in order to go over that that back end stuff, because I think that's borderline more important right now. And this was really the only content that I had today that I planned on. Can you guys hear lawnmowers right now? Can you hear lawnmowers and yard equipment? Let me know in the chat.
It's not about that.
No.
What is it about?
It's about power. Look, I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
Because
you telling me people in government are concerned with power?
I know. It's shocking. I know. Hot take.
Truth bombs being dropped on flagrant.
No, but look at it this way. So, and yeah, when I was in government in the South, like as mayor, when I had my kind of small government that I was running, we like took whole departments apart and put them back together. We removed people who weren't performing very well. And by the way, that was hard. Like one of the reasons I've always had a problem with this president is like he emerged kind of play acting, like firing people for fun, right? It's like his tagline is "You're fired." For me, at least, as like a young like CEO basically of a city government, other than dealing with violence and death, the worst part of my job was firing people. Like I hated it, especially because like it wasn't necessarily a bad person, but you had a person who's in a role that they didn't fit in, and their department wasn't doing as well as I thought it needed to do to serve residents. I would have this very painful conversation where we'd sit down, I'd look them in the eye, and that sucked for obviously most of all for them. But anyway, we were not afraid to do that because you have to do that.
Yeah.
But look at what happened when they came in, right? If this was actually about government efficiency, then the problem you would be solving, which is a real problem, is that in the federal government, it is too hard to reward your top performers. So you could be somebody who could be commanding a multi-million-dollar salary in the private sector, working on something wildly important, but there's just no way that you're getting, you're in your particular pay grade, same as everybody else. And to remove your bottom performers. Like a lot of people who've been in and out of business and government will tell me, like when I was in the private sector and the public sector, actually like the top 10% were pretty much the same, these amazing driven people. The government ones weren't compensated as well, but they were purpose driven. But the bottom 10% was completely different because I couldn't do anything about the bottom 10%. Right? So imagine if Doge had come in, had gone through every and said, okay, we're going to create a way to reward the top performers. And we're also going to analyze who's either whose job description is no longer needed, or their job performance is not there. And even though it's painful, even though maybe it's politically tough, like we're going to show them the door. That would be one thing. But they just sent an email to everybody. Many of whom were in fact top performers. Like some of the people they fired who got caught up in this thing, people got fired just based on whether you were in a category called probationary employee. But to be clear, probationary isn't like you fucked up and you're on probation.
Yeah, you could start.
You could actually be because you were promoted. You could be a 7-year veteran at the FAA, or maybe you'd been there as a contractor, but you were so good that the FAA said, we want to hire you now as a government employee. And even though it might have been a little pay cut, you went for it. And you're probationary. And then next thing you know, like you wake up one day and this office, department, whatever Doge is, clearly hasn't like gone through and checked like who's doing a good job or who's there's no way because there wasn't even time to do that. And they're just like, guess what, you're fired. Too bad.
I want to skip to a clip just because I agree with him 100%. And
Wayday is Wayfair's biggest sale of the year. Score up to 80% off area rugs, up to 60%.
This video is brought to you by Surf.
It's an Adam Mockler clip. It's okay. It's okay. So what's going on right now? I'm sorry to kind of cut it short or whatever, but I think we kind of get the vibe, and I do need to do something else basically. And I have yard people outside my house that are kind of screwing me up. I'm not gonna lie. They're literally weed whacking immediately outside my house. I love them because they are cleaning up my neighbor's yard, but they're also being very loud and it's very distracting. However, the point that he's actually made, which I think is great, is that Doge isn't fulfilling its actual capacity. It's consolidating power. And what they're really doing is that they're effectively making it easier in order to get people to be Trump sycophants, because you basically know that if you're in the federal government right now and you don't meet their metrics, they'll fire you for arbitrary reasons. and it wasn't a performance-based thing. They fired them automatically. What I think we can take away from this is that Pete is competent. Pete's intelligent. Pete's capable of going into contentious or fraught live environments where you can say the wrong thing and kind of get trapped up. And so as a result, he should be a serious contender. If he continues in the alternative media the way that he is, I still think that the United States is homophobic enough that he probably wouldn't win a general election. However, I would want him to, right? I would want him to, right? Because if you told me this dude was married with 3 kids with a woman, I'd be like, okay. And then if you told me that this dude was gay and had a couple of adopted kids, I'd be like, okay. He literally, he's not some like, I'm sorry for being mean and offensive to our bisexual and homosexual members, but he's not like some like femme bottom who, you know, just exudes like no capacity for aggression. Hey, shut. Who exudes this capacity for like no aggression. And he's also not like some like bare top who is like hyper promiscuous, who is advertising his sexuality all the time. He's just a dude. He's just a dude who happens to be gay. And I think that's awesome. So I would love to see him in the primaries again. I would love to see him run for the general. And I would like to see American polling indicate that they don't care that he's gay. I would actually love to see that. Right. Short gay guys are not. But he's also short. You guys are being brutal. You're being brutal. But no, but I think Pete's a good dude. I think that was an excellent segment. What I'm going to do, though, I did get some feedback from the people in reference to a meeting. I think that's wildly important in order to make sure that Valor is in the right way. We're already up to 23 hours, 24 hours for content. And so in my opinion, the meeting is more important than producing content. So I parasocially love you. Thank you guys for hanging out. Thank you for the donations this morning. I do appreciate it. Particularly Liquid's back. Thank you for your donation. And it's been an excellent week. So sorry for the short stream. I just literally have yard guys outside of my house. And I think in order to care about Valor Media Network, I think I need to fight in order to get the back end moving. So yeah. Sacred Snow, I got your name correct. Have a good day and good luck in your meeting. Thank you kindly. Thank you kindly to Jonah Boy, Razzle Smasher, K Soko, Christian Valeris, Gen X, Void, a Parrot. I parasocially love all you guys. I'm sorry for the short stream. I'm going to run, though, just so I can handle business. Ironside, good to see you. Harmonic Fox, good to see you. Bigging Gaming, thank you for the insightful comments. I do appreciate it. Mr. Bombastic, love all you guys. Bye for now.